Good evening. I would like to welcome all of you who have come out here tonight, and I'd also like to welcome those people who are watching us through our website. My name is Dr. Douglas May, and I'm a member of the Department of Economics here at Memorial University, and one of your hosts representing CARE. The other hosts are Professor Scott Lynch and Dr. Wade Locke. Wade is on the west coast of the island, but is certainly here in spirit. And it is he who has put a great deal of effort into trying to making this event happen. Well, what is CARE? Well, it stands for the Collaboration for Applied Research in Economics. Now, the goal of CARE is to research current economic issues of general interest to our province, and also a bit beyond to the Atlantic Canadian region. And then what we want to do is to present our findings in a manner that can be readily understood by the public. Our vision, that is CARE's vision, is that we will not only form people, but we will also foster discussion. The leadership debate here tonight is totally consistent, I believe, with the CARE spirit. Now, I would like to welcome the three leaders of the main provincial parties in alphabetical order. First of all, Mr. Dwight Ball of the Liberal Party, Premier Paul Davis of the Progressive Conservative Party, and Mr. Earle McCurdy of the New Democratic Party. Gentlemen, welcome. I'd also like to thank these individuals for agreeing to participate in this debate because there's a lot of call on their time. Now, we have divided the questions for this debate into four general areas. As you can see, many of you have a sheet of paper before you. First of all, we want to deal with the state of the economy. The next general area is income distribution and poverty. The third area is growth and innovation. And then finally, we want to deal with fiscal management. You can review the debate at the posted CARE website. And the website, we're going to have it up here, but it's www.mun, that's mun.ca/care. And the DELTS crew should have that up there about a week from today. So you look at it there, you can review what's been said, more detail. Before I begin, I just want to deal with a couple of housekeeping matters. First of all, for you, the two exit signs, I feel like I'm in an airplane. The exit signs at the back, I don't think oxygen masks are going to be needed. Exit sign at the back. And also, if you go through the one on your left, my right out here, then go through there. There are also washrooms, I think further down the hall on your left. The other thing is, and usually I'm the person who's caught up on this, so in my class, I tell everyone to turn their cell phones off, please. And then at that point, mine usually goes on. So would you please check your cell phones now? Third thing, is debate. There's a tendency to take pictures. You can take pictures, but if you use a flash, it's going to play havoc with the cameras. So please don't use a flash. Now, the debate is quite lengthy, and I'm sure that everyone would like to get into it. And so with that, I want to turn the podium over to VOCM's open line host, Patty Daly, who has graciously agreed to be our moderator, tough moderator too, for tonight. Patty.
Thank you very much, Dr. May. Thank you. Given the influence of Nalcor on the province, I think we'd be remiss not to have a safety minute. If the lights go out, Chair, and head for your closest exit. I do want to echo the sentiments of Dr. May, and I do want to thank Dr. May, Professor Lynch, and Dr. Wade Locke for including me and inviting me to participate tonight. It's been a long time coming. The campaign has been unofficially on for quite a long time. Any conversation about the economy will not only govern your vote, but it'll give us some indication about how we're going to proceed with investment in a variety of issues: social programs, education, healthcare, and yes, roads. So we're going to talk about the economy at great length tonight, and we do want to welcome our leaders. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. The format is going to be pretty simple. There's 4 questions. They've been provided beforehand to the 3-party leaders. At the first, I didn't know what to make of that. And I'd like to be involved in crafting the questions, but I think to our benefit, they've had the questions in hand for quite a long time. What that's going to allow us to do is to push them for some specifics to the economic questions that are facing the province and facing our 3 parties as they try to woo us as voters. So tonight my role will be not only to make sure there's equitable time in the open debate, but as these 3 gentlemen know, having been participants on Open Line many times, specifics, something we can sink our teeth into, real answers with some details that we can actually assess party platform, assess their positions as leaders, and the potential for them to lead the province into the future. So what's going to happen here is we have opening statements coming. There has been a random draw that was gone through excruciating fashion, and there has been that draw established. There's going to be 4 questions posed, as I mentioned. The leaders will be given 5 minutes each to offer their answer in the party platform, and on the heels of all 3 gentlemen having a chance to offer their answer, we'll have an open debate in which we hope for not only some sparks flying and see some contrast between the parties, but I'll do my best to ensure that there's equitable treatment and equitable minutes available for all 3 party leaders. And thank you very much to everyone who has made their way to the Bruno Centre tonight. An impressive crowd. Apparently there's a game of stick and ball on the go somewhere tonight, but we do know that the real contest that matters in this province is beginning tonight with the answers offered by all 3 party leaders. Once again, a round of applause for our 3 party leaders. Let's get right to the opening statements, and as per the random draw, our first speaker tonight is the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Premier Paul Davis. Premier Davis.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you both, Mr. Ball and Mr. McCurdy, for participating in this evening in this debate. I want to let you all know that I was looking forward to and welcome the opportunity to talk about our economy and to talk to people and to talk about our future. And we know that many of you here in the room tonight represent our future, and it's glad to see that not everybody said we got to do ball and nothing else tonight, because there are just a pretty good crowd here. I'm sure people at home are probably tuned into both, but we're glad to see you turn out here this evening. I'm looking forward tonight to shining a light on the remarkable progress that we've made as a province in the past decade. I'm just as eager to talk about the choices that our government has made in the past year since I became Premier, and to get a clear picture of where we're going, take a closer look at how far we've already come. Both economically and socially, the gains that we have made as a province are substantial. Mr. Ball has said that Newfoundland and Labrador is the least, the last, and the lowest. And what Mr. Ball probably should have said more accurately is that when our party, the PC party, came into power in 2003 after the Liberals had been in charge, the province really was the least, last, and lowest. We were last in the country in terms of poverty, and now we're second best behind only Prince Edward Island. Unemployment rate was at 16.5 back in 2003, and today it's at 11.9. A decade ago, our GDP was 10% below the national average. Today, it's 20% above the national average. Income levels went from 20% below national average to the second highest in the country today. Wages are up, disposable personal income is up, vehicle purchases are up, retail sales are up, housing starts have been up, and families are doing significantly better now than when we came into power back in 2003. So those gains reflect the deliberate choices that the Newfoundland and Labrador Progressive Conservatives made to invest in infrastructure like roads, like hospitals, like schools. Deliberate choices to invest more in poverty reduction than any government in this province's history. Deliberate choices to invest in innovation, diversification, agriculture, clean energy. Deliberate choices to invest in post-secondary education. And we have invested $238 million to give Newfoundland and Labrador the lowest tuition fees and the most progressive student aid program in the entire country. Deliberate choice that we're proud of, because we believe in investing in students and investing in our future. Our province is a national leader on many economic measures because of the choices that we've made as a government. Now, you can't lead if all you see is doom and gloom. You can't lead if you think that we're the lowest, we're the least, or we're the worst. And again, we've heard that from Mr. Ball and the Liberals. Now, that's not how I see Newfoundland and Labrador. I share the confidence of business leaders in this province. We can't overreact because of the cycle in oil and mineral prices. Short-sighted reactionary policies can jeopardize long-range economic goals. And many of you remember the Liberals' approach in the early 90s when rash budget cuts did more harm than good. Instead, we've charted a rolling plan that takes into account the commodity prices, the commodity price oils, and oil prices and the cycles, and it guides us back to a better fiscal position. It's a plan that avoids deep cuts to public service and jobs that would hurt people and jeopardize our recovery. It's a similar approach to the one that we took back in 2009 during the global recession. And when other provinces panicked a little bit and we chose a measured and balanced progressive path. It got us through the storm and got us back to growth. Now, Mark Carney, who was one time the Bank of Canada governor, now he's the governor in the Bank of England, he praised us back then in saying that our approach was the right one, and he was proven right. The sky didn't fall then, and the sky is not falling today. Our economic fundamentals are incredibly strong. Our resource pool is the envy of every other province in Canada. Our people are talented and becoming well-educated. Our future is secure and incredibly bright, and that's because of those deliberate choices that we made. And it'll be short-sighted, and it would lack vision to abandon that course when we're on a ground that is so well proven over the last decade. So tonight I encourage all of you, whatever your politics, to separate the rhetoric from fact, and you're going to hear both of it. You'll hear some from all of us, I assure you. But the facts prove that the economic course that we're on, the course that has brought us to where we are today, is the very path that offers the best prospects for the future of Newfoundland and Labrador and Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier Davis. Our next speaker, as per the draw, is NDP Leader Earle McCurdy. Mr. McCurdy.
Thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I can only assume that people here are either political junkies or don't like baseball or both. But in any event, they're good to get a crowd on a night when the competition is fairly serious. I'd like to thank the organizers. It's always good to have an opportunity to discuss the economy and the people and the future of our province, and I'm certainly was glad to respond very quickly to say yes, I'd be more than pleased to do so. We have to approach the challenges of the coming years with optimism. We can't shrink our way out of financial difficulties. We need a comprehensive approach based on a confidence that with our natural advantages and the ingenuity of our people, we can successfully organize our affairs so our people prosper, notwithstanding some of the difficulties which will confront us from time to time. I'll try tonight to outline some of the values which are the basis of how we'll go forward in the upcoming political campaign. I believe we need to build on our strengths, our natural resources, our environment, and our people. Our history in dealing with social and economic challenges has been to treat the symptoms when we should be tackling the root causes. I believe that social, economic, and environmental issues are inextricably interwoven, and you can't tackle one without starting to delve into the other. The challenge for us is to dovetail financial management objectives with quality of life objectives. And what struck me as remarkable has been how often this can be done if you stand back and take in the full picture. I'd also like to point out that it's been demonstrated over and over and over again in different parts of the world that austerity does not work. Cutting back and shrinking and pulling back and being cautious engaging in a bunch of tax cuts and very little positive action has failed people over and over and over again. Because often the real choice, when you come down to it, is pay now or pay more later. I'd suggest to everyone, beware the siren song of privatization. There's no private sector solution for mental illness. There's no private sector solution for domestic violence. There are many issues that have a huge social and economic cost if we fail to tackle them in a comprehensive way, and many of them require public institutions to get the job done. My working experience in life was in the private sector. I get the need for private sector investment in our economy, absolutely essential, but it also has to be buttressed by a strong and dynamic public sector. I also understand from bitter experience what happens when we fail to use our natural resources in a sustainable manner. In my past life, I'm used to working out deals to put jobs in rural Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm used to reconciling conflicting ideas and finding a way forward, all of which I think is not a bad apprenticeship for the job I'm seeking. We need a vision of a society centered on a fairness of opportunity, the lessening of inequality, sustainable use of our natural resources, respect for the environment, treating our seniors with dignity, and a determination to provide opportunities for young people in our province to put down roots and raise families in our province. Since Confederation, we've spent 66 years jockeying back and forth every 10 years or so between the two traditional parties. Can we really say that's worked? I believe it's time to try a different way of giving all our citizens a fighting chance of realizing their dreams and aspirations. I believe we have the team to convey hope and optimism to the next generation of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Not only that, but throughout this evening and in the days ahead, I believe you'll see that the NDP has a solid vision for this province, both economically and socially, based in ideas that work, and we'll be rolling out the planks of that plan in the coming weeks. Our goal is to build a more diverse economy with high-quality jobs in local communities, supported by a strong public sector, to create a province where inequality is reduced and where we can attract and retain our working-age population while providing the appropriate level of care to the seniors who built our communities and our province in the first place, and to those whose disabilities limit their ability to contribute to the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCurdy. What I can report so far, folks, the egg timers are working in the political offices. Our final speaker in the opening statement is Liberal leader Dwight Ball. Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Patty, and it's great to be here. And to you, Mr. Davis, and to you, Mr. McCurdy, and Patty, you feel free to jump in if you get any updates on the Blue Jays game tonight as well. Thank you. I want to thank CARE 2 and Memorial University for organizing tonight's debate. The economy is one of the most important issues facing our province today, something that impacts each and every one of us, and certainly something that is on the minds of people across the province. Every day we hear people that are concerned about. They are concerned about facts, not rhetoric. They're concerned about jobs. They're concerned about increased taxes, about the affordability of basic things like housing, electricity, and food. We hear from business owners who cannot find people to work for them, let alone train to take over their businesses. We hear from communities who rely on cyclical and traditional industry and they feel forgotten. We hear from young people who are uncertain about future opportunities and seniors who need more support in their communities. And every day we hear from people who are concerned about the economy. And Liberals are concerned too. The people of Newfoundland and Labrador have been looking for this government for strong fiscal management and economic stability. They have been asking for a long-term vision and have been waiting for a plan of action that will ensure the best management of our resources and create the right conditions to both diversify and grow our economy. However, this government has failed to provide that strong fiscal management. They have failed to take steps to stabilize our economy. They have failed to follow through on the 10-year sustainability plan we watched them roll out just 2.5 years ago. With more money than any government in our history, more than $25 billion in oil revenue, we should have been well positioned to weather any storm, allowing us to control our destiny, not the other way around. The people of Newfoundland and Labrador deserve a government that can deliver strong leadership, better management, and long-term planning. Leadership in government that involves collaboration and openness to recommendations on how to manage and grow an economy. But it's also going to mean we have to do things differently, doing things better. It means creating the right conditions for success. It means using innovative solutions to overcome some of our biggest challenges in areas like healthcare, like education, delivering the best systems in the country while also creating economic benefits. It means following through on strategic plans to achieve long-term economic strength and sustainability, and putting in place the strong fiscal management that our province needs now more than ever. The current government will claim that they have focused on the economy with the promise of prosperity just around the corner. They'll say they set us up for success. They'll say that they are creating jobs through resource development and paving the way for our youth. But the reality is quite different, where people are facing economic hardships as a result of growing unemployment. No other province in Canada has experienced a decrease in employment in the last year as we have in Newfoundland and Labrador. And as a result, we have thousands of people out of work, more than 3,700 just last month alone, who cannot find work in our province. Many of those are young people graduating from post-secondary programs. Training our young people with the right skills to match those current and future jobs is critical, because today's students are the workforce that will drive the provincial economy and the future of our province. And if it doesn't matter about setting them job up for success, we have to do this. Work and raise their families there. The job is important. If not, we will lose them to other provinces and other parts of the world. I have great confidence in our Liberal team, a team of candidates with strong business backgrounds, industry backgrounds, academic experience that is unmatched by any other party. And they're the only team that will help move this province beyond the challenges of today and toward a better future. We need to take a serious look at the economy and the challenges that we are facing so we can get it right for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, so that we can become less dependent on oil and focus on all industry while looking at new opportunities that are out there for our province. I have great pride in our province, great pride in our people, far too much pride to allow our province to be outperformed by any other province in healthcare and small business growth. Let's not shy away from competition. Let's embrace it. We have too much to offer, in my estimation, more than most. We are rich and wonderful culture, the best people. Tonight, I'm pleased to be here to talk about the economy, the challenges and the opportunities, but also how we move forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ball. So we've heard the opening statements from all three leaders, and this is not offered as a criticism, but because we provided the questions prior, that we hope that's the end of the battle of the speeches, and tonight we'll get into some of the details about what all three parties have planned for the economy of Newfoundland and Labrador. The first question, as crafted by Professor Lynch, Dr. May, and Dr. Locke, is as follows. And the order for answers, Mr. McCurdy, you'll be the first one here to answer this question, sir. Question number one. Please describe your perception of Newfoundland and Labrador's economy as it is today. Please explain how you expect the economy to change over the next 4 or 5 years under your leadership. Please indicate what specific policies you would implement to enhance the positive aspects of your vision for the economy, and discuss whether your policies have negative short-run impacts. Mr. McCurdy.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. First of all, I'll start by taking from my favorite economist, friend Jim Stanford, brilliant economist, I might add, a definition of the economy. He calls it the way we work and relate to one another. The Newfoundland Labrador economy today is kind of a witch's brew of challenge and opportunity. Notwithstanding the repeated warnings of our Auditor General, we've been putting all our eggs in the oil and gas basket for quite some time now, and are now paying the price for that. In addition to the decline in both oil price and production, the political safety valve known as the Alberta oil patch has been much less effective in the past few months than in the past decade. Mega projects continue to drive much of our economy, but they're starting to wind down. Aging population, which includes increasing numbers of seniors and a pending shortage of working age population, is a lens for which all decision-making must be viewed. The next 5 years, we have to seriously challenge ourselves to provide real opportunities for the youth of our province. A friend of mine, a young person, said to me one day, "My generation is screwed." We can't accept that. We need their intelligence, their energy, their ingenuity, their understanding of the province, their attachment to our past, and hopefully to our future. When people are looking for excuses to cut services, a popular rationale is to say, well, we can't pass on, we can't run the deficit, we can't pass on the debt to the next generation. Well, what about the opportunity deficit? What about the environmental balance sheet? Is it okay to have the next generation bear the brunt of climate change and environmental degradation because we were asleep at the switch? I would argue that that's probably the greatest debt. Climate change is a reality. We have to be part of the solution. I appreciated the opportunity to speak and take questions at the Newfoundland Environmental Industries Association conference last week, and to talk about the concerted effort required to develop a green economy. The increasing number of seniors presents both a serious challenge as well as an opportunity to establish stable jobs in both urban and rural communities. We'll take steps to improve the health of seniors, to keep couples together, to recognize the value of keeping them not only in their own homes, but also thereby in their own communities as long as possible, so they can continue to be part of the life of that community. I expect significant changes in our fishery as the recovery of cod stocks continue, and climate change continues to have a significant impact on our marine environment. Finally, Muskrat Falls will have a significant impact on our provincial economy and on individual household economies as electricity bills increase very substantially. As to specific policies, in the coming weeks, we'll be providing details of a green jobs plan that will help citizens prepare for the Muskrat Falls invasion of their pocketbooks while creating jobs in both rural and urban parts of the province. We'll be developing a cod industry revitalization plan to help provide the tools for our fishery to maximize on the quality of our products, coordinate our marketing efforts, and manage our fisheries with sustainability and quality as guiding principles. We need to professionalize the home care sector with appropriate occupational standards, training, and rates of pay that will attract young Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to remain in their home communities to do that important work. We need a child care strategy that makes child rearing an affordable option for young families. We need to invest in our cultural industries. They aren't some kind of cute appendage, they're economic drivers. And we need to invest in the short to medium term to help address systemic issues in healthcare in particular, focusing on preventative and mitigating measures and actions to reduce long-term costs and strains on our public services and to improve the health of our people. We can't focus only on acute care. A key element in making all this work is a recognition of the role of public sector workers in delivering key services. I believe the public sector workforce is currently demoralized. We need to improve their morale by setting forth a clear vision of our socioeconomic goals and the important role we need public sector workers to play in achieving those goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCurdy. Mr. Ball, same question to you, sir.
Thank you, Patty. Well, first of all, I will begin with my perception of where we are today. Our economy has great potential, one that's tied to many different strengths, but also where enterprises can emerge. Our province is rich in natural resources. Our communities are places of opportunity. Our businesses are innovative and diverse. Our people are known to be hardworking, adaptable, and vibrant. However, there is a clear disconnect between our potential and our current economic performance. If we look at where things are today, by definition, we are in a recession. Our economic indicators are moving in the wrong direction. Commodity prices are weak. Housing starts, Mr. Davis, are down, and according to your budget, will continue to go down. Unemployment is up, and this Davis government has no plan other than hoping for oil prices to rebound. The Conference Board of Canada predicts no real GDP growth this year. We will be the only province to experience a decrease in GDP in 2016. That's a minus 1.6%. They also say the labor market will continue to decline with fewer jobs in the next 5 years. This clearly reflects the conclusion of the 3 large-scale projects in our province. In September alone, our unemployment rate increased by 2.1% to 13.6%, even with those projects ongoing. So while this government waits for oil prices to rebound, we can expect the trend to continue. The current government has had more money than any other government in the history of our province. Now they want to raise taxes, impacting every single person in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Conference Board of Canada says that the Consumer Price Index, what we pay for things, will increase by just 0.7% in 2015, but it will shoot back up to 3.3% next year. And why is that? It's because of the HST increase. So it is time for stronger leadership and better fiscal management of our province. Now, over the next 5 years, we can move beyond today's challenges and take steps to grow and diversify our economy. Our team of entrepreneurs and business leaders have decades of hands-on experience in everything from small business to the largest of enterprises. A team that will not only put economic diversification and innovation at the core of policy decisions, but also will take action. We believe there is opportunity to grow a stronger, a smarter economy, focus on diversification, job creation, and growth. But we can't lose sight of the fact that as a resource-based economy, there's always going to be challenged by the fluctuation in commodity pricing. Yet this government is willing to tie almost everything to the price of oil, including its 5-year fiscal plan. So while it's important to maximize the benefits of oil and gas, we also need to focus on other industries. There is an incredible potential in the renewed growth of fisheries, aquaculture, agriculture, forestry, and mining. There's great potential in growing tourism, innovation, technology, and knowledge-based industries. Under a new Liberal government, our economic focus will include entrepreneurship, driving innovation, expanding trade, and community partnerships. We will create the conditions for success using evidence-based decision-making, and we will conduct a thorough review of regulatory review to ensure the burden on business is minimized and to help Newfoundland and Labrador companies grow. We know red tape currently costs businesses in Newfoundland and Labrador $116 million, and this government's plan to increase the HST will only slow the economy further, something Liberals will reverse. A new Liberal government will develop a comprehensive human resources plan and build a local workforce with the skills needed for the jobs now and into the future. A young entrepreneur retention program will encourage innovation and provide an incentive for youth to stay home, build businesses with stable careers. And we will work with our post-secondary institutions through adult education and apprenticeship programs, as well as improving K-12 outcomes. We will also create a recruitment strategy to encourage Newfoundlanders and Labradorians living away to return home. This goes hand in hand with an immigration strategy. But our priority is always ensuring Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have good, well-paying jobs. It's time to build a Newfoundland and Labrador that is self-sufficient, sustaining, and strong.
Mr. Ball, thank you. And our final speaker to the first question, Premier Davis.
Thank you, Patty. And this question is about what our perception is of the economy today, where we see it over the next 5 years, and then what we're going to do to advance and grow it. That's what this question is really about. And I mentioned in my opening statement that our economy has changed very much in the last decade or so. And in 2003, after 14 years of Liberal rule, the economy in Newfoundland and Labrador was simply in the tank. There's no other way to describe it. It was in the tank. We were the poor cousin of Canada. And on nearly every major economic indicator, we ranked last. We had a lot of work to do since 2003. So think about where we are today. I mentioned GDP, personal income, employment, and wage rates. And think about how far they've come in the last decade or so. People have more money to spend, and businesses have thrived. And we have national chains who've set up operation here in Newfoundland and Labrador who are the highest grossing operations anywhere in the country. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business reports that business confidence for Newfoundland and Labrador businesses remains very high. Small businesses are thriving under our government. We are more competitive than we've been before. Personal income taxes are currently the lowest in Atlantic Canada, and we have the third lowest marginal tax rate in the country. You'd have to go as far as Saskatchewan and Alberta to find Canadians who pay lower income taxes than they do here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And it wasn't that way in 2003. We have the most accessible and affordable post-secondary education anywhere in Canada. And if you just look at this facility and what Memorial University has to offer Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, it's second to none. Labor markets are robust. Unemployment is down from where it was. And yes, and in the last year, the big drop that Mr. Ball talks about from September last year to September this year, 0.9% difference. Our investments in infrastructure are supporting economic growth. They're helping to drive the economy. When we build roads, we build tens of millions of dollars on our road program every year. And that is many times more than was spent when we came in. Our roads were in terrible shape. Our schools, Look at the new schools that have been built in the last decade. When is the last time you heard or saw a news report that a school was closed because of mold? Do you remember those days? Because they were commonplace one time. And as I said, look at our university right here. We've improved access to venture capital to drive long-term business development. Something new for Newfoundland and Labrador. We're more integrated into the national global economy than ever before. And a combination of government and private investments have improved fiber optic links to the rest of the world. And by the time the current broadband initiative is completed, 98% of the people of our province will have access to broadband. 98%. Now that's a snapshot of where we are today. Now as for the next 5 years, our fundamentals remain strong, and despite the short-term fiscal challenges, and yes, oil is a big factor in our economy, but 35% of our revenues have come from oil at peak. So mid and long-term prospects for Newfoundland and Labrador, they are very good. They're great, actually. Construction on large projects like Valley, Muskrat Falls, and Hebron are going to transition into operational phases. And that brings a stable and long-term employment for a range of professionals and skills. And because of the decisions that we made, interest in all aspects of oil and gas will continue to grow. Decisions such as taking responsibility for promoting our prospects. Decisions like undertaking seismic work that we now sell to oil companies around the world who haven't previously been players right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And the oil industry is taking notice. Last year, a $500 million bid for one parcel of land offshore. That's a commitment to invest $500 million in exploration over the next 5 years. And we've just opened bids for new land. That seismic work shows and indicates that quite likely it's going to contain 12 billion barrels of oil. That's equal to 7 Hibernias. It's enormous. So as production continues, and new production is imminent, the new era of exploration is beginning. The difference that this time that Newfoundland and Labrador is in the driver's seat. We weren't before, but we're in the driver's seat because we've taken back ownership of our oil industry, and we've taken back the decision power in our oil industry. Aquaculture is growing. It's transformed the South Coast. Go visit the South Coast if you get a chance and see how people have found long-term, meaningful, stable, good jobs, and how that's transformed the community. How that's brought Newfoundlanders and Labradorians back home, and it's keeping people home here in our province.
Thank you very much, Premier Davis. Okay, so here we go. Inside that positive vision for the next 4 or 5 years, I guess where we need to go here is, unfortunately, what it's meant in the last number of years of this province across the country. Creation of jobs has sometimes been job vacancies put in the paper. We've relied on some of our natural resources to create jobs for us. So if an investment in jobs is a government role, when in fact that only plays a partial role, can you please elaborate on where you're going to create a job so far as government influence, government investment goes? Because that's the catch-22 in this province. Either reliance on 35% of the provincial treasury from natural resources, or a government investment can actually create one single job. How do you approach that particular task? And who was first off the mark there? Mr. McCurdy, I'll let you tackle that part of the equation.
Well, I think the one area that we really have to focus on is the whole area of the green economy. We have to create a green economy. I think, quite frankly, in our province, we've been a tad lackadaisical in this area as a people. I think we have to pull up our socks in that regard because, you know, our economy depends on our environment. If we don't look after our environment, our economy will suffer. We certainly found out the hard way what happens in the fishery when we don't sufficiently take care of our resources. I believe that we have a responsibility to the people, the homeowners, renters, businesses and so on, with the pending increase that we're going to see in electricity bills in a very short period of time, which will have an impact on people who don't have a cent to spare in their current budget. Then we have a responsibility to have an extensive system of retrofitting homes and businesses to allow them to cope with the rising unit costs. The other alternative, I suppose, we could leave them to freeze, but that really isn't a very practical way of proceeding. So we have to do that, and we have to create the optimism in our province. We have to get youth involved. We have to give them an opportunity to stay here. I believe one of the challenges, how do we provide opportunities, economic opportunities in rural communities that are dwindling, especially if if the the loss of the Alberta opportunity continues, because that really did pick up a lot of slack in rural communities for a long period of time.
Let me jump in here very quickly. I'll pose this question and let the other leaders jump in. Mr. McCurdy, once again, if you could probably or hopefully name one single green job that's not already a job doing something else today.
Well, if you retrofit homes, have an extensive program of retrofitting homes in the province, then that would certainly classify as a green job in my books. It's a job aimed at better using our resources, at sustainable use of power resources, and to help people cope, because this is going to be an awful wallop for the public of this province when those Muskrat Falls rates come into effect. And if nothing is done between now and then, you're going to see a lot of hardship in this province. It's going to take a lot of work. As it happens, people with the skills to do that kind of work are going to be getting laid off shortly as these mega projects wind down. And what an excellent opportunity to hang on to those skills in this province, to get them to work at something productive, to tide them over, and to prepare us for an era when power bills, or at least the unit costs of electricity, are going to be much, much higher.
Mr. Ball, your thoughts on green jobs, whether or not that's a government subsidy required to create that initiative and to create additional jobs, and your concept of the green economy?
I think the concept of a green economy, there's certainly lots of opportunities around the province right now we can put more focus on the green economy. I did speak to the Newfoundland Industry Association again last week, and one of the things that I talked a lot about there last week was just the whole idea of conservation of energy, and how we conserve energy, and we retrofitting homes and so on and so forth. Because if we now live in the situation where, as Earle mentioned, the high cost of energy in the future, which is going to impact competitive businesses and make it more difficult for people to stay in their own homes, as an example, is that we need to be able to make sure that we conserve as much as we can, and if indeed we're going to sell that surplus power to make revenue, or indeed we're going to attract businesses to the province using that. So these are a few examples, but for me, and I guess I'll be speaking second on this, my big focus will be around economic diversification. As I've went around the province, in the last 2 or 3 years now, we have 16,000 businesses in our province. We've got about 5,000 to 6,000 jobs that will need to be replaced come 2017, 2018. So we need to work with our small and medium-sized businesses to create this new employment. As an example, if you go to the Northern Peninsula right now, very high unemployment rate there, but yet a huge asset in the forestry industry and in the fishing industry that is virtually untapped. If you go to central Newfoundland, this government has walked away from that area with 180,000 cubic meters of fiber ready to be used as an economic development. This government has done nothing to promote that industry in that area. You see tourism also on the Northern Peninsula. If you go into the Bay Verte Peninsula, you'll see examples around the mining industry, where right now we're literally in exploration less than half of where we were just a couple years ago. The Premier talked about is inheritance. Per capita debt in 2003 and 2004, Patty, is the same as it is now. So they have not grown at all. And I'd ask them, please do not announce any more plans about sustainability in our province, because since you announced that plan, we are now $7,000 worse off.
Premier Davis?
$7,000 worse off. Patty,
Per person.
We have $7,000 worse off as a province is not bad. Per person. Patty, we've done great partnerships in this province. We've done great things to diversify the economy in partnership. We created the Research Development Corporation, which has done enormous work in partnering with industry and startups in research and development. Green economy is a great future for Newfoundland and Labrador, and we're transitioning from a dependence on non-renewable resources to clean, green energy. And for the first time, we're going to have open access to markets outside Newfoundland and Labrador because of steps that we've taken as a government. Mr. McCurdy's talked about rates. We know that the stable long-term rates, are going to benefit Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And when we sell our electricity to markets outside of Newfoundland and Labrador, that's going to help support those needs as well, and help support the cost of rates and the cost to ratepayers. In the United States, there is a huge, very quickly growing demand for clean electricity. There's no two ways about it. I've met with New England governors. I've met with Eastern Canadian premiers. And there's a big interest and a big need for clean electricity. The United States is moving here very quickly. They need to move off those fossil fuels. They need to move off those dirty polluters. And we have a huge amount of energy in Newfoundland and Labrador. We have a huge amount of energy in Muskrat Falls. And while Muskrat Falls power can be generated here in this province, as we transport that clean electricity outside the province, the entire globe benefits from the environmental positive impacts and results from that clean electricity. the entire area will benefit.
And
There's
we're happy for the plan, but it takes 20 cents to generate it, 5 cents to sell it, especially in the northeastern United States. So Muskrat Falls, and everyone jump in here. Has the horse left the barn? Is there any controls that could be afforded to Muskrat Falls, or is it simply a renewable that we will be able to say that we've cut our GHG emissions, which is important, albeit, but as a hydro-paying a member of the province and a citizen, it's not my number one concern.
Well, I've kind of perplexed by Mr. McCurdy's comment as well, because when we came in 2003, we knew there was a power problem in Newfoundland and Labrador, because the previous government did not have a replacement plan. The previous government knew that Holyrood was coming to the end of its life cycle. It never had a plan to fix it. The previous government knew that there was a growing need for electricity, just by the industries, by the electronics that occurs, by the growth in our province, that there's an increasing demand for electricity. And there was no plan. There was no plan to correct that. And we had to deal with that, and we had to deal with it in a hurry. One of the problems with the aging infrastructure, we've seen that. We've experienced that. We experienced that in the wintertime when we were wondering, during the worst of storms, are our lights still going to work? And that's because of the infrastructure that existed. But we're investing and we're moving to fix it. And the green economy, moving to a green economy, can benefit jobs in our community, in our province, as well as it can everywhere else. And we can benefit from
Muskrat
that.
Falls, what do you do?
I'm perplexed that you're perplexed, because because whatever the long-term rates might be and however stable that might be will be cold comfort for someone living on a fixed income the day that the Muskrat Falls power rates come into effect and they get a wallop on their electricity bill, because they don't have
Our lowest
money to
income
spare.
earners, our people who live on the lowest incomes, pay less taxes than they ever did before. And in fact, we're going to get to in a later question about poverty reduction, because we've got a poverty reduction plan that we've brought into this province, that we've executed this province, that has been a highlight of the country. It's been the best in the country anywhere in the focus that we've put on poverty reduction. And that also impacts our seniors and our low-income people. They're benefiting from the poverty reduction initiative that we've created, and they're getting the benefits every single day. And it makes it more affordable for them to live here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and we've done a number of programs and support services that go around that.
Mr. Ball.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, we got, I guess, a new definition of P3's upper, three perplexed politicians. So right now, I want to remind Mr. Davis that in the last 7 years, we've had one surplus budget in the last 7 years. And that was, by the way, the last year of the Atlantic Accord. Now, I want to go back to Muskrat Falls here just a little bit here.
No wonder.
Keep in mind.
Look at the mess we inherited.
Keep
Dwight,
in mind,
just
$25 billion. That's quite the
Let me ask
mess,
you now.
isn't it, Premier?
Are
But
Newfoundlanders
he
and
talks
Labradorians
about
better off
Muskrat
today?
Falls.
Excuse
He
me, sir.
talks about
Premier Davis, go
Muskrat
ahead, Mr.
Falls.
Ball.
He talks about Muskrat Falls as the be-all to end-all to New England power. 500 megawatts of power, 165 megawatts of that, 500 megawatts of power that he can actually move to Nova Scotia. 165 megawatts of power of that power is identified for Nova Scotia, and a first right of refusal then by Emera on the rest of it. The rest of it is going to be used back here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I say to the Premier, if you think that you're going to save the New England states by a Muskrat Falls project, I'm going to remind you, you're in for one rude awakening here. When Muskrat Falls was sanctioned, they said then a barrel of oil at $60 a barrel would have been the defining point for that project to be successful. And the forecast in the Muskrat Falls project said this, that by 2012 to 2025, oil would be between $90 and $130 a barrel. Mr. Davis, your report was wrong then, just like your report was wrong for your 5-year plan in last year's budget, because at this particular point, you're saying that it should be much higher than that, and it's not.
Premier Davis.
Muskrat Falls is not about benefiting New England states. Muskrat Falls is about benefiting Newfoundlanders and
being
Labradorians.
export and creating revenue.
No, I never interrupted you. No,
Go on, Mr. Ball.
yeah, it's about benefiting Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. It is a century project. This is a project that's going to be around for 100 years or more. And if you look at projects, long-term projects that have been around, and I quite often will refer to the Hoover Dam, been producing power for 85 years, clean, green electricity for 85 years. And Muskrat Falls will do the same thing. And people complained about that project, same as they did Upper Churchill.
for the Hoover Dam?
They complained about Upper Churchill as well, and they're complaining same as some like yourself are complaining about Muskrat Falls. Well, Mr. Ball, let me ask you a simple question.
that are
Let me ask
paying
you a
the
simple
full
question.
rate.
No? Are Newfoundlanders and Labradorians better off today than they were in 2003?
Well, per capita debt, 22,000
Easy.
each
Yes or
man,
no?
woman, and child in our... I'm answering your question.
No, it's a simple question.
We have
Are
not
they
had-
better
We've
off?
not had a surplus in the last 7 years, except for the Atlantic Accord. Housing starts are down. Matter of fact, housing starts right next year will be
that
down
a
to
no?
2001 level.
Are
I'm
they better
talking
off?
about the
It's a
facts
simple
here.
question.
You want to talk about the rhetoric?
No.
I'll talk about the
I
facts.
just asked you a simple
Bankruptcies
question.
are going up in our province. Debt is at the same level as it was in 2004, just over $11 billion range. GDP is not growing. So if you want to talk about facts, this is what I'm telling you. You may not like the medicine that I'm delivering here today, but these are the facts.
And then
Well,
we'll
it's
have
not
ample
about the
opportunity
facts.
for medicine. Mr.
So I
McCurdy, you
just
want to wrap
point,
up
if I
this
can,
segment,
just
sir?
very quickly, just
Very
very quickly,
quickly,
and
then
I'll
Mr.
certainly go
McCurdy
to
wrap it
Mr.
up.
McCurdy. Just to point out, I asked a very simple question. Are Newfoundlanders and Labradorians better off today than they were in 2003? And Mr. Ball won't answer the question.
Mr. McCurdy.
Well, I guess the starting point in 2003, it wasn't one that was all that great, one it would have to be said. But I think we have to look at, one of the considerations we have is whether or not we took advantage of the unique opportunity offered by that boom time in the oil industry. And the problem we really have emerging out of the last 10 to 12 years is that in full knowledge that the history of commodity pricing is that they go like this, a roller coaster. Always was, probably always will be, whether you're selling cod blocks or bunker C or whatever you're selling. And we use the extraordinary resources at the high end of the market as if the good times would never end. We're like the grasshopper fiddling through the summer instead of preparing for the fall, not looking at the fact that inevitably these prices will come down. We had tax cuts that were financed, welcome as they would have been, financed by the high oil prices, which were not sustainable. And that's some of the difficulties in which we now find ourselves, and that we'll have to tackle in the years to come.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll move on to question 2. We will get ample opportunity to answer what I think is an important question. Are you better off today than you were X number of years ago? Let's move on to question number 2, and the first gentleman to get to respond to this is Liberal leader Mr. Ball. Question 2 reads, the number of tax filers with after-tax income in excess of $200,000 has increased by 300% between 2003 and 2012, and it has Newfoundland and Labrador become more prosperous. The provincial government has attempted to ensure that those vulnerable to poverty achieve higher standards of living as well. To this end, the province has made significant investments in poverty reduction strategy. Has the strategy been successful? Is there a widening gap between the economic winners and losers in Newfoundland and Labrador? And if so, what specific policies would you implement to improve the situation for current and future generations? Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Patty. Measuring poverty can be challenging, and while there have been some improvements under the poverty reduction strategy, there is still a long way to go. If we consider the following, you'll see why. Our province has twice the national average in food bank usage at just over 5%. We have 10,000 children relying on food banks because they don't have enough to eat. 22% of our seniors live in poverty. There are many ways to measure poverty, and we've seen rates range in our province from 5 to 13.4%. But we do know that 6.5% of our population is living on income support. The poverty rates are higher for seniors, women, single parents, and people living alone. And with those living in poverty, experience greater health issues as a result of poor nutrition and access to health services. Newfoundland and Labrador ranks 7th worst in the country for inequality between the highest earners and the middle income earners. Poverty rates are measured by Statistics Canada using low-income after-tax cutoff. In some areas, that would be just over $12,000. In our province, the poverty rate for families is at 17.9%, 3% above the national average. But even worse is the poverty rate for our seniors. It's 2/3 higher than the national rate. Research also has shown us that for every dollar a middle-income earner made in 2011, those in the top 1% earn $6.40. So when the poverty reduction strategy was launched in 2006, the government promised to launch phase 2 in 2011. But like so many other plans, it has yet to deliver. The people of Newfoundland and Labrador deserve better. Our approach will be multifaceted and community-driven, with a long-term vision and appropriate funding and support. It also requires big-picture thinking because none of the issues we are facing today exist independently of one another. When we talk about poverty, it's an impact on people. There's one word that comes to mind. It's dignity. We can't afford to put additional stress on people, and that is especially important for those who are living in poverty. Stress that will only be escalated with this government's planned HST increase, but something a new Liberal government will roll back. This, in addition to our commitment to use the sale of excess power from Muskrat Falls to help offset the electricity rates, will also alleviate some of that stress. Providing relief to those in poverty is important, but we also need a focus on education to help people succeed and gain meaningful employment. That is why I've committed to establishing a Premier's Task Force on educational outcomes. We also recognize making the necessary programs and supports available are important. A new Liberal government will increase the funding available as part of the Early Learning and Childcare Supplement in order to recruit and retain early childhood educators in the communities throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. We know many of our young people with little education and lower skills are particularly vulnerable to cycles of unemployment, and many post-secondary graduates now seem to struggle to find jobs to match their skill set. We also need to create a more inclusive workforce for people with disabilities and remove barriers for employment for women and encourage other gender diversity in leadership roles. Sadly, we also know there is a connection between mental health and poverty. Too often we see factors related to mental illness lead to unemployment, poverty, and homelessness. That's why a new Liberal government will make mental health a priority, starting with the replacement of the Waterford Hospital to provide a modern care we desperately need. And we need strong federal partnerships. And I am pleased to share the stage with Justin Trudeau just recently as he announced a federal Liberal government will invest significantly in new affordable housing units in our province. Liberals will focus on diversifying the economy, ensuring strong benefits for Newfoundland and Labrador companies. This will include a renewed focus on the significant potential of our fishery, our forestry, mining, agriculture, and technology sectors. Liberals will focus on strong local benefits, partnerships, increased capacity, and business positioning in our province, giving people the opportunity to live in Newfoundland and Labrador without having to struggle for the basic things that we all need in life.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. Next up is the Premier. So I guess to reiterate the question is, has the poverty reduction strategy worked? Is the gap widening? And if so, what are you going to do to fix it? Premier Davis.
Thank you, Patty. We are one of only a few provinces that have a long-established, coordinated, integrated, and sustainable approach to alleviate the effects of poverty. And it's a very important matter in Newfoundland and Labrador as it is in all of Canada. Now, Statistics Canada report that this province has the lowest level of poverty in the country. Now, that's Statistics Canada tell us that. The National Poverty Reduction Summit held in May 2015, and they had this to say about our province. They said, Newfoundland and Labrador has moved from the highest level of poverty in Canada to the second lowest. How we support vulnerable people speaks to how we address poverty, and that's so very true. We all would like to eradicate poverty, but not everyone had the foresight to make reducing poverty the high profile that we've done, and we've done that. We were among the first to have such a strategy in Canada, and it continues to be a coordinated approach through the income tax system with higher payouts, fuel and energy subsidies, minimum wage, and so on. And has it been a success? Yes, it has been. But can we do more on poverty reduction? Yes, we must do that as well. We absolutely have to. Regardless of whatever indicators you measure poverty by, if it be the low-income measure, the low-income cutoffs, or the Newfoundland and Labrador market basket measure, all those measures are showing declining rates of low income for our province with fewer people in lower income brackets. And the market basket is probably the best measure, seen by many as the best measure. And based on this, between 2003 and 2012, the incidence of low income declined from what used to be 97,500 people back in 2003 to 59,610. So that's about 38,000 people who were removed from the ranks of low income because of the policies that we've brought in, because of the plan that we've enacted. And bear in mind, during that period of time, our population went up. Just in case you're thinking that maybe it's because of our population decline, it's not. During that period of time, our population actually went up. So it's really, I think, an important achievement and a remarkable one for our province. And again, it happened because of deliberate planning, because of policies and actions of our government. And that's who we are. Tackling these important social and economic challenges is what we'll continue to do in the future. We're committed to that. And we've heard criticisms from the opposition parties about the proposed increased HST. Mr. Ball just mentioned it now and just again said that he won't do it, he'll cancel it. But what he hasn't talked about is the HST credit that protects low-income earners, because that's part of our HST announcement, which Mr. Ball never focuses on. Because our government has expanded the credit, there will be 126,000 people eligible to receive it this year. That's twice as many as last year. And the amount of the rebate is going up to $300. And that's part of the HST plan. From my perspective, a lot has been done to bridge the gap, but there's also no doubt that more can be done on poverty and income disparity, and we intend to continue our progressive approach. The economy is growing, and people are doing better. So we have to continue our efforts to ensure that nobody's left behind as the economy continues to grow, especially in the years ahead when we know that those prospects, those phenomenal prospects will create even greater wealth. So CARE, our host here tonight, actually concluded in a report recently. And they said, to date, Newfoundland and Labrador is an exception to the general trend of increasing income inequality. Specifically, income inequality in Newfoundland and Labrador has not noticeably increased, even though the general standards of living within the province have improved both before and after taxes. So that's our very hosts here tonight who are saying, no, that inequality is not worsened. As a matter of fact, we are bucking the trend, and we are not going in the direction that many others are. And CARE's study also looked at the fairness of Newfoundland and Labrador income tax system. And it concluded that both taxes and transfers have made Newfoundland and Labrador system more progressive. And since the report was done, we have taken further steps, and made the tax system even more progressive through the addition of 2 new tax brackets so that higher income earners pay more, the very ones that are referenced in the question. And after all those measures have been taken, for example, we have expanded eligibility and coverages to 46,000 people annually under the Newfoundland and Labrador prescription drug program, a program that we've changed the rules on so that when you're coming off income support and moving into self-sufficiency, we don't cut off your programs and services. You can keep them. You can keep them for months. You can keep them up to a year while you transition from income support into working and feeding your own family and taking care of your own family. But poverty reduction should be a process that continues. It doesn't have a beginning. It doesn't have an end. We have to do more. We have to continue to work for it. But to date, Newfoundland and Labrador has been very successful.
Mr. McCurdy, same question, sir.
Thank you. The poverty reduction strategy was a recognition, and I applaud the government of the day for the recognition of the need to tackle poverty. A number of the elements of that strategy have been positive. Not clawing back federal child benefits, increasing low income tax cutoff, removing financial disincentives to work, and so on. But those have tended to treat the symptoms, not the root cause. And what we really need to get at is the root cause. One problem I mentioned, and I found out by knocking on doors in the district where I'm running in St. John's West, that many income support recipients are unaware of the programs that are available to them. And it's also hard to call the program a success based on some of the facts and some of the people you come across and some of the circumstances they're under. We still have an awful lot of, as recently as 2011, the last year I saw this stat available, 55% of taxpayers had incomes under $30,000 a year. In the recent edition of Vital Signs, the Harris Center indicated some communities in the province have poverty rates in excess of 40%. Folks, that's not okay. The median income for our seniors is 20% less than the Canadian average. Those are the people who built our communities and our province. So we have among the highest average earned incomes in Canada. We have we understand from Mr. Davis, the 3rd lowest personal income tax regime, and our seniors are living well below the level of the rest of Canada. Quite frankly, I think we, in light of all those circumstances, can afford to do better by our seniors than that. There are success stories. Look at the transformation of Conn River, now known as Miapyakuk First Nation, from a poor, isolated village with 90% joblessness to a proud, prosperous community with practically full employment. It's amazing what can happen when you give a community the tools to do the job. Going back to the question about the income gap, it is widening, notwithstanding the poverty reduction strategy. The best antidote for poverty is earned income. It's unfortunate that the provincial government ignored the recommendation of its own minimum wage review panel, and doubly unfortunate that the Conservatives and the Liberals, Mr. Davis's party and Mr. Ball's party, voted as one to vote down an NDP private member's motion to catch up for lost time on the minimum wage and to index it annually thereafter to inflation. We also need to address the expense side of the equation. Housing in our province is too expensive for people with low incomes. A systematic approach to fixing root causes of poverty is an example of what I said about quality of life objectives and government financial management objectives being compatible. In a recent study, the U of T and others were involved in a study of 50,000 adults in Ontario, and it found, astonishingly really to me, that 5%, the top 5% of healthcare users in that province accounted for 2/3 of the healthcare expenditures in the province. And it was similar in Manitoba, where there was a study. I know that's not Newfoundland, but it points to the need to address the root causes. One of the professors who conducted the study said, "We found that those with lower socioeconomic status, that is lower income, lower education, food insecurity, housing issues, were much more likely to transition into a state of high use of health care in the next 5 years." A doctor that was interviewed said, "The bottom line for me is that we can either pay up front or pay down the line. If we pay up front to keep people healthy and away from social deprivation," he said, "then we can probably prevent a lot of those health care expenditures." That's what we mean by evidence-based decision-making, as opposed to our Prime Minister's decision-based evidence-making that we've seen so much of. We can't close enough hospital wings, privatize enough services, or lay off enough doctors or nurses or other healthcare professionals to come close to the savings we can realize in healthcare by systematically tackling the root causes of poverty that give rise to people having to make more use of the healthcare system than they otherwise would have to do. That will take an upfront investment, and I think that's something that we need to be prepared to do. We need a greater priority on public health and primary health care, including community health clinics. As a doctor put it to me, and I've made it my business to speak to a lot of people, nurses, doctors, administrators, and others in the healthcare sector, and as a doctor put it to me, we're stuck in a model that doesn't work. More than 95% of our funding in healthcare goes to acute care. Full engagement with healthcare professionals, anti-poverty activists, advocates, frontline workers is needed to develop a plan to save money long-term while helping those in poverty immediately. And we need to start that conversation.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's move on to the open debate portion of this. And with all due respect to all three gentlemen, we went through our 5 minutes. I think we'd all be well served here this evening if we talk about what your plans are for the future. And with all due respect to the party policies and comments about root causes, I didn't hear really very much in the way of attacking the root causes, more treatments of the symptoms. And the easy answer is to tax the rich. And then it's just as easy to subsidize the poor. But that is just absolutely perpetuating what is the problem. So if we can all speak to, and we can go straight down the line here, we'll start with Mr. Ball, who had the first opportunity, to treat the root causes. How do you treat the root causes? Because pulling people out of poverty will reduce subsidy, will reduce the burden of having to overtax any certain demographic of earnings. So let's talk about that, because we haven't heard much on that front, sir.
Well, yeah, Patty, I think during the 5 minutes that I had, I really announced about 5 or 6 different specific strategies about the root causes, contributors to the root causes of poverty. But I just want to talk about one right now. This would be affordable housing as an example. Not only would you address the root causes of poverty by giving people a safe place to live, and this is something I'm very proud, as I said earlier, that the federal leader Justin Trudeau has made a commitment to, and as well as a commitment to infrastructure development in throughout the country, and therefore our province would benefit from that. So affordable housing is one component of that. I know, as being an MHA that represents a rural district, one of the biggest things that we deal with on a daily basis is people that are really looking for housing in communities in our province. So addressing that is a great place to start, and there's economic benefits by, putting those our skilled workers to work with, just that, influx of money. The HST as an example, rolling back the HST, I see that as something that takes money out of the hands of the pockets of individuals in Newfoundland and Labrador. That's the reason why we've made a commitment to roll that back. The Premier seemed very proud to say that he's going to offer somebody an increased subsidy. Well, that's the last thing that people want that I'm talking to. They want to be able to have an affordable living, to be able to make an affordable living themselves, which comes to me is around education. We have about 36,000 people in the province right now that are on income support. About 25,000 of those are adults. There's quite a few of those that we can actually retrain and get back into the workforce. I've worked with many clients over the last 30 years in what I've been doing, and got people that are living in some very desperate situations that are currently now in directors in healthcare as an example. So it comes with education. You give people affordable housing so that they can have a safe place to live. Reduce the HST right now. The Premier didn't say, by the way, that the cost of living will go up because of the HST hike that I mentioned earlier, up to 3.3%. That's a significant increase in the cost of living, for anyone that's on low income. And it suggests that once a year, I'm going to give you back a rebate, so you have to wait for January, February, March, right on through till sometime in October or February when you get your rebate check, and that's supposed to satisfy low income earners.
John?
By the way, the seniors on the Northern Peninsula of Newfoundland and Labrador, it's 40% of them are living in poverty right now. So if you go to the Northern Peninsula, you speak to 10 seniors, 4 of them are living in poverty.
It'd be great to be able to deal with them. It'd be great to keep the next wave of 40% out of living in poverty. Mr. McCurdy?
Well, I guess a good place to look for an example of something that works. We don't. Sometimes we get too insular here. Perhaps it comes from being on an island. I got to say, by the way, Patty, I wish you were as slack on your buzzer with me as you were with Minnie from Mount Pearl the other day, because you would have spared all of us a little. But the Medicine Hat example.
Simmer down, Earle. Go ahead, sir.
The Medicine Hat example. Quite amazing what happened. I listened to the mayor of Medicine Hat on As It Happens one night. Very, very interesting interview. He said, I'm a social conservative. I believe in keeping taxes as low as possible. So I thought, well, geez, we're off to a great start already. But then he talked about their program to eliminate homelessness in the city of Medicine Hat. And what he said is, we have a guarantee to our people that if anyone is brought to our attention as being homeless, within 10 days we'll have them in a home, not a shelter. They might have a shelter in the meantime, but within 10 days they'll have them in a home. And he said the words to this effect. He said, look, I wasn't convinced of that by some kind of bleeding heart argument or humanitarian argument. I thought, as far as I was concerned, I worked 2 jobs to put a roof over my head. What's wrong with the rest of you? I was convinced when people put the numbers in front of me and made the argument that it was much less costly to house somebody than it was to cope with the consequences of their homelessness. Incarceration costs, acute care hospital costs, and other costs that were on society. He said not necessarily municipal, but it meant more tax dollars to support them when it made a lot more sense to put them in a home, plus, of course, the added dignity and the opportunity for those people to make a productive contribution to society. No-brainer.
Thank you, Patty. And I think that was for you and not for me, Earle, just saying.
I thought so too, yeah.
Yeah, I think so?
Yeah, I think so.
I
I think we can agree on that.
I just, and actually, I think, in all honesty, I think you and I agree on a lot of matters. And there are some things that we have some differences on, but there are some matters that we actually agree on.
You didn't seem to join the applause there or anything.
We do, I didn't know. But we do agree on the importance of poverty. And to your question, Patty, about the
Eradicating
comment
poverty,
of...
Shorty. The importance of eradicating poverty.
You lost me as it happens.
Yes, eradicating poverty, yes, absolutely. But we are not just tackling the symptoms, we're actually tackling the problems, because there's 39% fewer people who are in low income today than there was when we began our poverty strategy. So the strategy is working. That's people who depended on social programs that are now self-sufficient, who've moved off that. So there's people who've gained employment. They've advanced in their own education. And they've progressed from dependence on the state, on government, on social programs, to being independent. 39%, as I said, 38,000 people. I think if you ask 38,000 people if they're better off today than they were 10 years ago, I think those 38 will say definitely that they are, and they've been successful doing that, and hats off to them. But to one of the comments that you made, and is that we have more work to do. And there are areas and there are classifications of people who we haven't had the success with that we should have. And one is seniors. We have more work to do on seniors. There's no two ways about it. And one of the things we're doing on the HST that Mr. Ball has referenced is that part of our HST plan, if you look back in the budget, you'll see it there, is that the HST, where we know that's going to impact low-income people who reside in low incomes. And right now, there's a $40 HST tax credit. And we're going to increase that to $300. So that's a tax credit they're going to receive in the fall of the year, Christmas coming, just before Christmas time. They're going to receive that increase. And what I just heard Mr. Ball say is that they don't want it. Well, I beg to differ. I think the people do want it.
What I said was...
I think they do want that. And I
What
think
I
that
said-
they
that's not true.
do want that benefit, because we have to close the gap on inequality, and we have to provide assistance and supports to low-income people. We have to provide the opportunity for them to get an education. We have to provide an opportunity for them to grow their value and be able to get a job that meets their means so they can raise their families without having to rely on social programs.
What you're saying, Mr. Davis, Mr. Davis, is you want to put your hand in the right pocket so that you can give it back to them in their left pocket. That's what you're saying by increasing the HST. You'd rather... I've made a commitment over 3 years ago with the sale of surplus power from Muskrat Falls. We would put that back to offset the electricity rates for people in Newfoundland and Labrador, because we all know that the rates are going to be impacted by that. That is something else that will put people in poverty. So when we have the rates of seniors in Newfoundland and Labrador that are 2/3 higher than the Canadian average, you know, that is not a successful plan, as I'd say. There's many things about the poverty reduction program that I've seen firsthand. Some of that is around education, and it's made a meaningful difference in people's lives. I think we would all agree on that. Many people do want to go to work. It's as simple as that. But, you know, when you look at raising the HST so that you can actually give a subsidy on the other end, that is not what the Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that I speak to, that is not what they're interested in. When you increase the cost of living in our province by a 2-point increase in the HST by 3.3%, that is not, that's not the way to get people out of poverty.
Yeah, I guess one of the particular point with respect to poverty we shouldn't lose sight of is just how many of the people in poverty in this province are single elderly women living alone. Wow. And that's a situation that cries out for, you know, to be addressed.
How so?
Women take
it's important. What do we do right there in that specific instance?
Well, I think first of all, for the long haul, we need to have a recognition of I think childcare is what comes in for the long term, so to give women an opportunity to join the workforce. I've had one woman and some men after another come to me while out canvassing telling me either I can't afford to have kids, or, as some have said, or others have said, I had to quit my job because I was taking home less than what it cost me in childcare to look after my kids, and the only way I can do it is quit. And if that's a single mom or a single dad, what that means, there's only one outcome for them, which is on income support, which is a terrible way to end up when they were contributing to the economy previously. So childcare is part of it. I think in the case of single elderly women alone, would have to be something, direct assistance, and there's various ways it could be done. In terms of the income tax system or ways of providing support to it. Part of it for the long haul, we've got to be a province that's outspoken. I think in fairness, the previous Premier, as Mr. Marshall was outspoken on the whole question of the Canada Pension Plan, OAS and GIS, to speak up to get them better, and the idea that you roll back the age eligibility and chisel on benefits and not make any improvements, which is a position of our current Prime Minister, is making life more difficult for not only our current seniors, but for the ones to come.
Allow me to let us send down another path here on the poverty reduction issue. Minimum wage always becomes part of the conversation. And then there is the income tax bracket and the burden on people who are low-income earners. There's a huge difference in increasing the threshold, which I think was done in the last budget from 18 to 21 or somewhere in those numbers. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Premier Davis. So what do we do? Minimum wage, if I hear Mr. Ball correctly, jacking up the HST could indeed be a job killer, but so could it possibly be, and I don't buy into the exaggerated right-wingers when they say jacking up the minimum wage kills jobs, but where do you stand on that? Minimum wage, an extra 50 cents isn't dragging anybody out of poverty, but some sort of relief in the tax world may indeed be more beneficial. Gentlemen, we'll go right down the line. Premier Davis.
Well, and we've got several tax benefits that have a positive impact on those with low incomes. And I think we've all said it here, that the goal needs to be for people to move off of reliance on social programs to self-reliance and to better jobs they can afford to feed and raise their families. And that's what we all want. To Mr. McCurdy's comment about seniors, and actually of the 6,390 singles in our province who are considered to be in extremely low circumstances, only 5% of them are people who are seniors aged 65 or over. So it's a small category. But the point I was making earlier, Mr. Curdy and Mr. Ball, was that there are pockets of people and pockets of people in their circumstances where we need to work harder to give them greater benefit because they are low income, and that we haven't been able to attach them and have a positive impact on them as some
or we check up
others.
minimum wage? Because they're two different schools of thought.
Well, yeah, and by increasing taxes for them or in raising minimum wage is not going to benefit either one of them. Raising minimum wage is going to put a hard impact on business. That's small business, and small business operators are going to be impacted when they've got to pay. If they got a small operation, they got to start paying higher wages. That's going to impact them and have
Let's
a
get
negative
down the line
impact as
before we
well.
run out of time. Mr. McCurdy.
But it's a
Don't
complex
fall-
issue.
Go back to
But it's
Premier
a
Davis.
complex issue.
Don't fall into that one about how to help working poor is on the tax bracket. Because if you're at low income, in fact, depending on how many, and if you're in a part-time job or working anything other than very long hours at minimum wage, you're not paying any income tax to speak of anyway. So that's not going to fix the problem. What you need is a raise. And Mr. Ball stood up in the House of Assembly, and Mr. Davis stood up in the House of Assembly, and their colleagues stood up and voted down a motion from the NDP to increase the minimum wage to catch up with those last years between 2010 and 2014. Which was when this was done, and they voted, and to have annual adjustments to keep up with inflation, and they chose to vote that down.
I'll let Mr. Rowley respond to that move.
Thank you, Patty. Well, I've obviously mentioned the HST many times, and it was the Mr. Davis himself that kind of had budget remorse when just 35 days after announcing the HST, and a media outlet said that, if the price of oil rebounds, well, then that they would reverse that. Well, at the day of that announcement, which was 35 days later, oil was actually lower then. So, I know he's uncomfortable with the HST increase that he's put in place, but if there's anything that will hurt people in poverty right now, it will be a tax increase. Earle is right. People that are in the low income bracket, they pay very little. They pay very little in income tax anyway, but an HST, I can tell you, is coming out of their pockets.
Well, I can understand why you'd want to change the subject from minimum wage.
I'll talk about minimum wage. I don't mind talking about minimum wage. I've got quite a few number of employees that have worked with me over the years, and I can tell you, none of them are working for minimum wage, but I will tell you this, that I know the impact, I know that it'll impact it has on small businesses, and I think that what needs to happen is that small businesses need to be able to plan for that increase. They need to know well in advance, just like the worker themselves need to know well in advance when you get expected.
I'm going to take a liberty here with the timing. Fair ball. I'm going to take a liberty with the timing, gentlemen. So one thing we talked about, everyone mentioned it, was social programs. You drive around town, and regardless of the rate of pay, whether it be minimum wage or slightly above, there's a lot of help wanted signs out there, yet we do know that the number of people on social programs continues to grow. And unfortunately, inside of that number is also a lot of sons and daughters of moms and dads who are on social programs continues to grow. Is that a problem, Premier Davis?
Well, I'm really not sure that that's the case, Patty, when you say that there's a growing number of people that are on social programs, because the numbers, as a result of our poverty reduction strategy, and the economic indicators indicate that there are 39% fewer people reliant on social programs today than there was 10 years ago.
Do we do enough to make sure that people who have an opportunity, able-bodied to go to work, actually go to work?
And that's
I'm willing to be the one that's
that's exactly the point I was making, because a poverty reduction program is not a start and a finish, so it's done and it's over with. It has to be a continued effort. And what my point is that we've been successful, not only just treating the symptoms, because we've done that as well, but we've also reduced poverty because of our initiative. 39% of people who are in poverty and low-income circumstances are no longer in those circumstances and have moved off those programs. And that's the point that I'm making, that we've been successful, but we have to continue. We can't stop this effort. This is something that has to continue. And the benefits are broad, as both these gentlemen have indicated. I've indicated some as well. The benefits are overwhelming for our province, for people and their families, and it's something, this has to continue to be a priority, and it will be for us.
Do enough people that could work actually go to work, regardless of the rate of pay? I know it's a tough question, and I'm willing to be the one that takes the knock, sir. What do you think, sir?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, I mentioned the child care ones. There's a lot of people that it costs them more,
Yep.
especially if those are minimum wage jobs, cost them more to go to work than and we have I think we're the second highest cost child care city in the country. But another issue is it'd be interesting to check out on some of those signs in the windows, go in and ask, how many hours a week? What kind of shift schedule?
Fair ball.
What's the pay? What's the pay like? Am I required to work after midnight by myself? There's a whole lot of questions that I'd want to know before so I don't pass judgment on people. I do know
Fair
I've
ball,
knocked
sir.
on some doors of some people who got some pretty tough circumstances, and my reading from talking to them is they would love to have a decent opportunity to get ahead.
Fair answer, Mr. Ball.
Thanks, Patty. Well, for me, any time when you have food banks in our province use 5% more than the national average, anytime you have seniors in our province, the rate of poverty is 2/3 higher than they would be at the Canadian average. Yeah, that concerns me. And so we can address that with things like affordable housing. The HST is another example of that. Making sure that we get people, as many people as possible, trained and ready, for the next, the next wave of the workforce that's required. A lot of it comes down to education and preparing our today's students, for the next job in the workplace so that they can actually make money and contribute, which they all want to do. They want to contribute to Newfoundland and Labrador.
I wonder, do we allow people to make those lifelong decisions at too tender an age as well? Maybe we'll get to that a little later in the program. Let's get back on track.
You can't forget
Derail
we have
us.
the lowest rate of poverty in the country today.
Understood, Premier Davis. Thank you. Let's move on to question number 3, and Premier Davis will be the first one to answer this one. And here it goes. This is my favorite, diversification. Newfoundland and Labrador has always been a resource-dependent economy, with specific type of dependence evolving from renewable to non-renewable resources to likely a mix of both, renewable and non-renewables, in the future. Some people have argued that our economy should be less dependent on oil and gas and more diversified. Here's where it gets interesting. Can you please give us your views on whether greater diversification is needed? And if so, how do you support greater diversification? What specific policies do you have that would implement different diversification strategies, and how does that include education and a focus on research and development, which is woefully lacking in this province so far as monetizing innovation? Premier Davis, sir.
Is greater diversification needed? Always is, Patty. It always is, and is always beneficial to do so. But Newfoundland and Labrador is not the province that it was a decade or so ago. And I've used a word, I know I'm repeating myself when I say that our province has gone through a transformation. Economically, we've been transformed in the past decade, and that's also led to societal transformation. And no longer are we the poor cousin. And we've become an economic pillar, and we've become better for it in Newfoundland and Labrador and better for it within Canada. And that's changed the way that the rest of the country looks at us, and it's changed the way that quite often we look at ourselves. And I see the pride when I meet people every day. I feel it, I see it, and people talk about it. Our business people, artists, scientists, students, tradespeople, we've become national leaders in so many areas. The economic growth that we've experienced over the last 10 years has had a lot to do with exactly that. We've come a very long way, and we've had a great story of progress to build upon. And I've heard the term economic diversification. Mr. Ball uses it. He's used it several times tonight, and the Liberals talk about it as well. And diversification is happening all around us. It's in every part of our province. And our role as a government, the way I see it, is to create a climate that encourages business operators to grow and to prosper, to take advantage of opportunities, to invest in new revenue streams, and for us, in many occasions, we partner with them. That's why we're using oil money to do such projects as Muskrat Falls, because think of that for a moment, using one-time revenue, non-renewable source, and creating a renewable energy source that will create those revenue streams for decades to come, and we've talked about that earlier tonight. We've grown tourism, culture industries, and we've made great advances in our film industry, using tax credits and direct incentives to build expertise and capacity right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. In ocean technology, there's over 88 organizations employing 1,700 highly skilled and well-paid professionals. They're generating $540 million a year in revenue. If you look at aerospace, Newfoundland and Labrador is home to 50 companies with 1,500 employees, an annual revenue of about $350 million. Provincial Aerospace, which is headquartered here in our province, is a world leader in marine surveillance, and their expertise is used by governments and militaries all over the world. And there's companies like Verifin, a world-leading software developer. Many of you have heard of Verifin and know about them. Subsea Imaging, GRI Simulations, both Newfoundland and Labrador born and raised companies developing technologies here that they're exporting globally. And we've companies like Dynamic Air Shelters, a really good example of a company that's been around for many years, and they're fabricating their products right here, and they're shipping them for use all over the world. So all of these initiatives have been fostered and nurtured by partnership with our government. And our approach to diversification pays particular attention to local opportunities and conditions, especially labour market needs and resources. Now, going forward, we need to start to move at what I like to call the speed of business, because government moves really slowly. So we do things, some things pretty good and some others not, but we have to become nimble. We have to become being able to change with the times. We have to plan strategically, and then we got to be able to respond quickly and execute plans more responsively. And we have to bridge the gap between what's quite often we see as great business ideas from some super people who got some great ideas, and then move that to economic prospects and to jobs. So we plan to aggressively reshape industrial policies. We need to extract more royalties and taxes from projects. They're our resources, and we should get maximum benefits from them. The industrial benefits will flow because that we've developed facilities and expertise that are required for large industrial projects. And also, we should never hesitate to capture those opportunities that come before us, which are attractive. And a good example of that is just recently, a few months ago, we made an investment with Johnson's Insurance. It's creating more than 330 new jobs, high-paying professional jobs here in our province. Those jobs were going to Nova Scotia. They were headed to Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, to be specific. And we intervened, and we worked with Johnson's, and they're not going anywhere else now in Canada. They're coming in right here because we stepped in. So we do have some strong export industries within competitive advantage, but the task before us now is to continue to grow diversification. But again, our history is fine. Our history speaks for itself. Diversification has been important to us. We've done well with it. We've made significant investments.
Thank you very much, Premier Davis. The next gentleman to speak to this one is NDP leader, Mr. McCurdy. Sir.
Thank you. We've had a very concentrated focus on the oil and gas industry, to say the least, for quite some time. Our current circumstances didn't exactly sneak up on us. Every year since 2007, the Auditor General has commented on the need to diversify away from oil industry because of its volatile nature and our overdependence on it. And Nalcor's annual reports have also acknowledged the same thing. A fundamental problem was, really in the years between 2000, the mid-2000s and 2013, those warnings about volatility were largely ignored. On the question of diversification, of course we need to diversify, but just saying the magic word doesn't bring about results. Concrete examples are needed. Specifically, I think we need to focus on sustainable industries. I'd argue a significant call on the revenues from non-renewable resources like oil and gas and mining should be to support sustainable industries, which in turn will be our bread and butter in the long run. To promote new and emerging industries, we have to fund R&D. We need to look closely at how we fund R&D. However, whatever the mechanism is, we need to shift R&D priorities from oil and gas, which is really dominated, to emerging sectors and in particular to the green economy. We need to focus on programs aimed at healthy aging, getting people out of poverty, encouraging family to have kids. I mentioned earlier the potential for a revitalized sustainable fishery, which supports the economy of small communities and provides a setting conducive to full realization of our tourism potential. We've only scratched the surface in our province of the potential for social enterprise. Social enterprise essentially is an organization that applies commercial strategies to maximize improvements in human and environmental well-being, which may include maximizing social impact rather than necessarily profits for external shareholders. We have some marvelous examples of social enterprise in this province that are doing wonderful work. I think the potential in this regard is limited only by our collective imaginations. Building healthy communities can be enhanced if we provide a supportive environment for social enterprise. And I mentioned earlier the example of Conn River and what a phenomenal improvement. I was there earlier this summer, and what a phenomenal improvement there's been in a relatively short period of time. So when government is undertaking contracts or sending out requests for proposals, we should include considerations where it is appropriate, such as community benefits and environmental impacts when we're doing this kind of work. Education is a critical part of making the most of our potential as individuals and as a society. The NDP commits to work with businesses, conventional as well as social enterprises, to review existing programs for business to see how they might be adapted to better suit their needs, for example, to help with startups, intergenerational transfer of businesses, reducing unnecessary red tape, and the like. We would certainly be open to developing a system of innovative tax credits to encourage R&D in identified priority areas. And of course, our cultural industries, which are so critical to our self-esteem and our sense of identity as a people, need strategic investments to allow them to maximize their contribution to the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Ball, you and I have had this conversation many times, sir. You have the
Hey,
floor.
thank you. Thanks, Patty. Diversification is critical to building a stronger economy in our province, and that's at the very core of Liberal policy. We need a multi-sector focus on our strengths while also realizing new frontiers and creating new sources of revenue. We have consulted with people working in industry across this province and built a plan to grow their sectors and improve opportunities. That, combined with policies focused on people and positioning our province to be competitive, will drive business growth and job creation. It will also help attract and retain qualified working-age people and their families. We need here in Newfoundland and Labrador, because without people, there is no economy. Our team is comprised of strong entrepreneurs and business leaders who offer both the depth and the breadth of experience required to expand future opportunities and better manage existing ones. Promoting a thriving business community in our province is central to that effort. We know it's small and medium-sized businesses where the opportunities lie for all parts of our province, creating jobs and supporting the local economies. We know how important 5 and 25 and 50 jobs can be to a community. We will support business growth by reducing the obstacles in the way of economic development. We will ensure trade agreements benefit our diverse economic sectors. This will allow our businesses to access new markets and maximize on opportunities for growth and innovation. In doing this, we will be active in trade negotiations and work to also remove barriers to export markets. The reality is today, businesses struggle with a government that has adopted a culture of regulation as opposed to a culture of service. We know, for example, red tape costs businesses in this province $116 million each year. We need a focused approach to further grow, develop, and diversify our industries. A new Liberal government will review and revise business funding support to encourage more growth and innovation across all sectors of the economy. Our innovation strategy will drive success, drive growth, and action. And under that strategy, we will foster more career-focused learning in our high schools to promote entrepreneurship and co-op education. In 2001 and 2002 school year, we had 1,308 students who took part in co-op education. Last year, not one single student was enrolled. Liberals understand that growing our economy and economic diversification will take time, focus, collaboration, and it will take hard work. That's exactly what we will do so that together we can build a stronger Newfoundland and Labrador. The oil and gas industry has no doubt contributed to our economy and our province, but we can't allow that success to take away the attention that's needed in other sectors. We need a renewed focus on our fishery, on forestry, mining, agriculture, technology sectors, and as Liberals, we recognize that. A new Liberal government will also invest in research and development to support diversification of the forestry industry in areas of bioenergy, biorefining, engineered wood products. These kinds of investments are important and must be tied to action if we're going to create a stronger province now and for future generations. For Liberals, some other actions we are committed to include aggressively positioning our province as a global center of excellence for deep water oil and gas, pursuing joint fisheries management with the federal government, freeing up more Crown land for economic development, working with the mining industry to promote partnerships and innovation for increased opportunities. We know at the core of all of this, education, research, and development are fundamental in forming the foundation we need for a more diversified economy. That's why I'm committed to a Premier's task force on educational outcomes, as well as cancelling the PC's No Zero policy. We need to ensure that our children are prepared for the economy that they will inherit. That's why we've also announced a young entrepreneur retention program to help our young, bright minds stay here, put down roots, and build a stronger economy for tomorrow. Diversifying our economy will mean making smart, strategic decisions. And while we've heard this government talk about making tough decisions, a new Liberal government under my leadership will be focused on making the right ones.
Thank you very much, sir. And I'm going to try to focus all of us in on some of these specific issues. You talk about the $116 million of red tape to small and medium-sized business. Mr. Ball, we'll start with you, seeing as how your person has brought it up a couple of times. What are those red tape issues, and how do you cut any of the money that is going towards regulatory and or approval processes?
Well, red tape as an example, I mentioned Crown Lands there when I spoke, Patty, and we have right now, as I talked about, a culture of regulation versus a culture of service. Right now, it is very difficult for anyone when you try and find your way to get through the various steps. And if you're a community, as an example, as an idea, and I know firsthand of communities across this province that would have a fantastic idea to grow business and attract business to their communities. So my idea here is to use the Crown land inside that community so that they would not add to pay for that Crown land up front. Work with government, develop that core of your community, attract the businesses set up there, and use that Crown land as an asset. Then, as the asset is developed, the people of Newfoundland, the Crown asset, they would get their money in return. But red tape, I can tell you now that if you talk to people in particular in the agriculture industry as an example, when you try and cut through red tape, to get a piece of Crown land so that you can use to create jobs in this province, I can tell you what, it is mind-boggling right now. I've heard people that's been waiting for years to get, processes approved, and that therefore slows down growth in the economy. So that is just one example. There's many, many more when you think about, how red tape impacts people, how it's impacting businesses. Just getting permits alone as an example. If you live in certain areas of this province right now and you needed just something as simple as an electrical permit to go and get the work done on that construction site, I can tell you it becomes very difficult and time-consuming to get those basic things done to keep that construction site moving.
I fought the government many times on permits. I'm surprised that it just took to now to bring up agriculture in conjunction with Crown lands. Let's talk about that as a growth sector that's potential in the province. It's a food security issue. It's the cost of product issue. Where do we go with agriculture? Because access to Crown land is one thing, but then to absolutely give people the seed money and the growth opportunity and security of market is quite another. We'll go with you, Mr. McCurdy, first.
Well, I think there's an area that you touched on, food security. I don't know how long the ferry has to be down before we start running out of vegetables, but it's not very long. About 5 days. Yeah, 5 days. So that's not a very good situation to be in terms of all the things that can go wrong in getting food to our doorstep. Not to mention the fact that just of the quality of the food, getting our own product. So I think it is an area that has potential for growth. I think part of it is that we have to work with the communities and with the regions to help them. To take advantage of those opportunities. There's areas of the province for sure where we're dealing with not much more than absolute bedrock and it's hard to do anything with it, but there are also areas where there is potential for doing something with agriculture. If I just touch on the Crown lands for a second, I think one of the problems that I'm finding out from talking to people in municipalities that they're finding is that, in fact, one of the problems is that the successive layoffs of public sector workers has meant that in Crown lands, they're overwhelmed with the workload. Some of the most experienced people are gone and retired, moved on, and they just can't keep up with the volume. But that's clearly an area where progress is needed. And I believe a new deal with municipalities in a lot of respects is worth having a look at.
Well, I mean, the public sector, we'll get to that in the next question. Premier Davis, the agriculture question has been dogging governments for decades. Mm-hmm. Not a whole lot of progress. We know there's an application for a cattle farm in Labrador. Mm-hmm. There's an awful lot of people who would love to get in the root vegetable business, even as something as simple as that on the island. How does that play into your role to diversify?
It absolutely does. It's an important topic, and actually Jim Lester, who's a new candidate for ours, and first discussion I had with him, being a farmer, a lot of people know him. First discussion I had with him, he raised food security as a major issue for him, and he's absolutely right. And Mr. McCurdy raised a valid point. The ferries go down and transportation networks are lost because of weather or other issues. Within a matter of days, it becomes an issue for us, and it's a very important matter for us. And Crown lands is also an important issue for me as well. And last fall, when I became Premier, one of the first decisions and priorities that I laid out for Minister Keith Hutchings, who had taken over Crown Lands as part of his portfolio, was that we need to do a full review. We've got to overhaul Crown Lands systems. It doesn't work in Newfoundland and Labrador. The comments by Mr. Ball, I acknowledge absolutely that it's a difficult process. We, as a province, we don't have a system. I think we're the only province in Canada where you can go look at a map and see who owns what lands. It doesn't exist, and it's a difficult circumstance. We're doing a full review on Crown Lands, on the policies, the act regulations that exist around Crown Lands, because we've got to change it. And we know that when we change it, it's going to be beneficial to business, it's going to be beneficial to communities, it's going to be beneficial to agriculture and farming, and it's going to be beneficial to individuals, people of our province.
And I think everyone will agree with that. And let me just lead us on another path here. You know, to diversify potentially might take some more people. And the population growth strategy has been much ballyhooed, but it's hard to understand how it's going to actually work. Look no further in the federal election to know that immigration has become a political hot potato, and it's become a very divisive issue. We need more people. How do you weigh that into your strategy to diversify? And we'll start with you once again, Mr. Ball, knowing what we've seen on the federal scene.
Yeah, and I'm going to finish up the conversation on agriculture because
Okay,
agriculture, because I didn't get a chance to chime into that. I was surprised that it took Jim Lester to speak to the Premier to hear about food security in our province when, you know, people have heard that, you know, on many of your shows for quite some time. And I do agree with the registry is required.
I fully acknowledge
well, thank you.
I acknowledge it's an important issue.
I
And what I'm
see,
saying
I
is that it's an
see
important issue for
agriculture
us
in
as
our
well as a
province
party.
right now because it's, you know, I grew up with it really in my backyard. There's some significant opportunities in central Newfoundland, and we need to explore those opportunities. I see it as an industry that can be 3 times the size it is in our province right now. We need a marketing program to buy local products as well, and there's things that we can actually grow in Newfoundland and Labrador now that we could not grow because of just the way things have evolved, that you can do that now that you could not do many years ago. So we have to work with that industry. We've met with them many times now, and they are keenly interested in working with government to make sure that we get maximize the benefits of the agriculture industry and help diversify our economy in the province.
Immigration, sir.
Thank you. Was that immigration?
Immigration.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, right now, as I said in my opening, or as I said earlier, that it's Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first. We create the employment for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. If by chance, you know, we do not have people, you know, that's ready to move into those jobs, then of course we need immigration to step in there, because if we do not have people to do the job, well then we will actually slow the economy. And the economic diversification that I'm talking about, in particular around agriculture, and there's other options as well around forestry, tourism, and so on, we will need those workers. So then we go to a process of making sure, I've already talked with our Atlantic Canadian colleagues as an example, the three Liberal premiers in PEI and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and we all feel that if we collectively make this pitch to Ottawa, that we can make sure that we will get our fair share of immigrants in our province to fill those much-needed jobs when we can't find Newfoundlanders and Labradorians
How do you
to do
react
that.
to those people comments?
Well, you know, they can, first of all, I think it comes down to, you know, there's areas that within, you know, around the world that would have interest in living in places like Newfoundland and Labrador. As an example, you know, Premier McNeil told me that they've created quite a considerable number of people that have moved in from Greece, as an example. So they've now developed somewhat of a culture for those people, and so it's that community now that is looking at Nova Scotia as an option. I'm sure we have similar opportunities right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. If you look at where the immigrants in our province are coming from today, UK, I think, would be number 1 right now. So, you know, there's areas that we can do. We have the market, you know, Newfoundland and Labrador, but I think broader than that, we need an Atlantic Canadian approach as well.
Yeah, it's easy to get them here. It's hard to make them stay. Earle?
First of all, since you raised the federal election, I'd be remiss not to comment on how appalled I was at the way at the abuse of that issue by the Prime Minister and the divisive nature of the campaign to turn people against each other. Having said that, I think because of the way that debate is played out, I think there's an object lesson there that and I think we will be looking at a future where we're going to need to attract immigrants. And I think in preparation for that, we should be looking at including discussions of tolerance in our school system and elsewhere, because we shouldn't assume that we're all great and it's everywhere else that got the problem. Sometimes we have our own socks to mend too in that regard. What we need to do is really focus on on tolerance. If I was looking for areas, just don't pretend to be knowledgeable about the area of immigration, but I was looking for sort of source countries where we might look to hope to get somebody who we'd hope to keep. I would think it probably makes sense to go to areas that have a climate that's somewhat comparable with ours. It got to be tough to move from the Caribbean somewhere to our climate here and expect those people to be able to just, it's so different. It's so different. Some have to their credit. But there's all kinds of places in Eastern Europe and so on that have the potential to provide people who grow up in a climate that's almost as miserable as ours and might and might find a way to fit in.
Except for
today.
Almost.
Okay, Premier Davis, let's wrap it up because I want to get to R&D as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Immigration is one of the pillars in our population growth strategy. Important part of it. There are a number of it. I'll be brief on it, Patty. There's a number of aspects of it that benefit. There's challenges because of the federal government rules have been challenging for us. I know that it's had a negative impact on small business owners who are struggling in some areas of the province to find employees to come work for them, and we know that immigrants can provide a valuable service and assistance to them. We have grown our number of immigrants that can come to Newfoundland and Labrador. A couple of years ago, it was around 300. It's gone to 500, and now it's up to 1,050. We just recently announced that, and that's encouraging for us. And I talked to some business owners who talk a lot about immigration, and they've been looking very favorable at it. And the other interesting important number is that we're growing the number that actually stay here. And I know you referenced that, but we're getting better at when they come to Newfoundland and Labrador and they stay here. Maybe it's because there's our warm Octobers and our weather. Just really quickly on red tape, if I may, because I've heard a couple of comments on red tape. And we took on, as a government, red tape initiatives and developed policies. And we've reduced about 80,000 red tape requirements in the province since 2006. And we have a policy today where there's no net growth, so that we keep those numbers down. There's areas where we can still reduce red tape reduction, and there's areas where we struggle to keep them even. But red tape reduction is an important part. We've done it. Businesses appreciate it. Business operators appreciate it.
Let's get some commentary on R&D, because certainly to appease our host here at Memorial University. It's a complicated issue. Canadians are good at researching, not bad at developing, but terrible at monetizing the innovative products that come out the other side. People are hesitant to exploit the Arctic so far as oil and gas, more innovation might lie on that front. So how do you foster R&D, and what do you think that actually means to the economy? Premier Davis, you can start. We'll go right down the line.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I had it in my notes earlier and just ran out of time, never got to it, because I want to reference the Research Development Corporation that was established here in 2009. And since that time, $111 million has been invested in 600 projects through the RDC. And actually, they've leveraged $345 million that have been leveraged through those investments as well. A lot of that is partnered with establishments like this, like Memorial University, like Marine Institute, and also many of their projects will focus on the Arctic. And the future in many ways is what the Arctic will have available, and we're looking at ourselves as a gateway, a natural gateway to the Arctic, and we're working to get ahead of that. So Research Development Corporation has been a big success for us, and it's proving itself over and over again. Businesses, researchers, entrepreneurs, young business have had great relationships, and it shows 600 projects is outstanding.
Any hesitation on going to the Arctic being a gateway, Earle, even though R&D seems to be an economic driver for many provinces?
Well, it would seem to me the areas of priority for R&D should be ones that where we see the growth in our potential growth coming in our economy, and I would certainly put as a highlight the whole area of the environment and either ways to better utilize innovations to better utilize the environment and take care of our environment, and also programs that would green energy type programs. On respect to the Arctic, I'm kind of wondering what our role is with respect to the Arctic. I mean, one of the real questions and conundrums of how the world proceeds over the next number of years is what we do about the whole area of climate change. And the area of exploitation in the Arctic, I think, is a very ticklish subject in terms of what kind of development. It's so sensitive environmentally up there, so what kind of activity is appropriate. For sure, down there, the whole idea of deep water drilling is make you nervous, given the sensitivity of the environment. And there's a reprieve there because the oil prices are down, but that's only until they go back up again, and that thing will be back on the table again. So I have some unease about that for those reasons.
Big opportunity, big money potential, but lots of risks. Mr. Ball?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I don't have any hesitation at all with the involvement in the RD, because even with the research that could be required around environmental policy, as an example, I think as a province, we're primarily located for that. I would think if you speak to the people in Labrador, and particularly those around, Appy Valley Goose Bay, they'd be very interested in looking at something like that, even if it's about environmental protection or industry development. R&D around deep water oil and gas, I've just mentioned that already. I think it's a focus that we should need right now. But I want to go back to something about the Business Attraction Fund. As we look at this, and it was $240 million that's been budgeted in that fund from 2004 to 2011. $240 million. Well, this is what this government was able to find and able to work in consultation with businesses in Newfoundland and Labrador. 88 million, 33%, that's all. So when you talk about bringing businesses to our province right now, working through research and development, through a business attraction fund, I can tell you now the report card is one of a big F. It's a failure right now. We have not produced the jobs. There is, Premier Davis did mention about digital media, and I will say, I think that was a great initiative. It's one that I first asked about over a year ago, and that's, I think, is one of the other opportunities and directions that we need to go in as well.
Let's move on. Question number 4, last one of the evening. This one is a long one. Okay. Nearly 50% of the most recent provincial budget was allocated to healthcare and education. As well, recent data indicates that the per capita expenditures in Newfoundland and Labrador in healthcare have grown faster than in any other province, and according to the Auditor General, the province's per capita expenditures have exceeded the national average by approximately 45%. It appears that public sector expenditures in Newfoundland and Labrador are unsustainable. Would you agree with that characterization? If so, how do you plan to deal with it? If part of the solution is to raise revenues, please outline where these revenues would come from and how your policies to increase revenues would affect the average voter. Is your plan of cuts to health care? And if so, and post-secondary education, if so, how? Please be specific. Thank you. We begin this one with Mr. McCurdy.
Thank you. I would say, of course, our per capita expenditures on public services are higher than in other provinces. Just check the map. We compare it to our nearest neighbor, Nova Scotia, and just leave aside the huge landmass, just for the moment, just put to one side the issue of Labrador, a huge landmass, roughly 3/4 of our surface area with 5% of our population. Just compare for the moment, the island of Newfoundland with the province of Nova Scotia. We have roughly half the population and double the landmass. So to say that we're going to deliver, and our communities are scattered all over the place, so to say that we're going to be able to deliver services at the same per capita cost in our province, even on the island, as they do in Nova Scotia, there's only one way that could be done, and that would be, well, I guess there's two. One would be the most likely one is to have really, really lousy service. We'd have to accept that. Or we're going to just kind of resettle everybody onto the Avalon Peninsula or something. But as long as we have people scattered out as they are, all over all over that huge territory with only, for example, healthcare. We have the population of the city of Hamilton. They have, I believe, 2 or maybe 3 emergency rooms in the hospital. We have, was it 21 or something? Healthcare institutions. So how do you do it? So the only way to, I said the only way to have the same service with the same cost with lousy service, unless, of course, we make a fundamental shift in how we run this beautiful place of ours. Public sector expenditures probably are unsustainable if we continue to do the same things and expect different outcomes. We need innovation. We need to depoliticize decision-making in healthcare, in particular, in favor of a more collaborative approach. A lot of this goes back to the inadequacies of our democratic structures. We need an approach that includes standing committees that are run along collegial lines, not subject to the riding crop of the party whip. A structure like that could engage frontline workers, community leaders, healthcare professionals, and the public in an inclusive, depoliticized, evidence-based discussion of what our priorities should be in critical areas like healthcare, public health, and education. We don't need to always hire expensive out-of-province consultants. Let's take advantage of our own expertise and values. Instead of a promising contest between party leaders as to who can promise to build the most buildings, pave the most roads, cut the most taxes, and somehow find a way to work within our financial constraints. We need to focus on a better way to conduct government. We need an education system that's responsive to the changing nature of our economy and our society. In the context of the aging that we've talked about already, how is same old supposed to work? In response to a particular question in amongst the introduction, the NDP does not plan to cut the health and education budgets. Equal access to health care and educational opportunities can only happen through a public system. This goes to the core of NDP values, and we believe it happens to coincide with the core of the values of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. A high-quality education, including early childhood, the school system, and post-secondary, is essential to both our social and economic well-being and our growth as a province. We need to retain young people by demonstrating there are real opportunities to put down roots and raise a family. We need a universal public home care service that professionalizes the work and makes it attractive to young people. The infrastructure is already in place. It's called people's houses, their homes. Let's provide support so as many of our elder people as possible can live not only in their own home, but in their own community, because of course that's what makes their life have meaning, that they're part of the life of their community. You go in a small community and go to any community event, like the pea soup dinner I was in the other day in Eastport, and you see all these old timers out serving soup, going around cleaning up the tables, and very much a part of their community. In education, we'll establish a formal process to bring relevant bodies to the same table, including Department of Education, NLTA, school councils, school boards, and so on, to meet as equals to develop goals and plans for the education of our children. In today's fiscal environment, it would be irresponsible not to consider revenue as well as expenditure sides of the government's financial accounts. We believe the government has strayed from fairness in the tax changes over the past decade. The bulk of the benefits from tax cuts have gone to the highest income earners, and yet in the last budget, the finance minister said we raised the HST. That was the fairest way to do it, he said, because it is broadly based, so the burden is distributed over the entire population base. Well, why then was that not the fairest way to reduce taxes at the time when taxes were coming down, when in fact the taxes did come 90% of the last round of tax reductions went to roughly the top 10% of income earners? Why the double standard? Thank you.
Mr. Ball.
The approach that the current government has taken to spending is unsustainable because there has been tremendous waste, something most people would agree with, including the Auditor General. A new Liberal government will be committed to a thorough review of government spending to ensure every dollar is spent tied to the best possible results across health care, education, and all areas. This will include spending by government-funded agencies and Crown corporations, including projects like the Muskrat Falls project, that has ballooned to a $9 billion project and needs to be brought back on track, something that needs to be supported by a framework of openness and accountability. My commitment is to an independent appointments commission that will support that framework and take the politics out of appointments and ensure we have the best people in these roles. With that said, a new Liberal government will establish a realistic process for annual budgeting, steering clear of the volatility of commodity predictions currently embedded in our system. We cannot allow the price of oil to dictate our ability to deliver healthcare services and impact post-secondary education. And we will stop the waste inside of government so we can redirect those savings to that areas that need it most. We will undertake a comprehensive review of real estate requirements in our province because we know there is an opportunity to sell redundant assets, as an example like the vacant Oils Eskasoni property and others that sit idle but continue to cost the taxpayers of this province money. We will also follow the recommendations of the Auditor General. This government has consistently ignored recommendations that would either reduce spending and improve efficiency. From 2009 to 2012, the Auditor General made 133 recommendations that were never fully implemented. Each of these recommendations represented an opportunity for savings, but instead now represents lost opportunities and resources away from key priorities. There is no denying in our province we are at a critical juncture. But Liberals will not cut post-secondary education or healthcare services. There are clearly budgetary pressures facing the province, but when it comes to post-secondary education, we are fully aware of the social economic return on investment it brings to Newfoundland and Labrador. Education will not be compromised by things like the volatility of commodity prices under a new Liberal government. When it comes to healthcare, there are many opportunities to apply evidence-based decision-making and improve outcomes. We have the fastest aging population in Canada. In just 10 years, 1 in 4 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians will be seniors. 15 years ago, there were 90,000 school-aged children and 60,000 seniors. Today, it's the exact opposite. Adding to this, we have some of the worst health outcomes in the country. And that's why last year I announced my vision for a better healthcare. Guided by my 30 years in healthcare and ongoing dialogue with frontline workers, this vision includes a youth wellness program to establish healthier lifestyles, a diabetes prevention and management program and a diabetes database, a mental health strategy, a dementia management program, health promotion, expanding the use of our primary healthcare teams, allowing healthcare professionals to perform to their full scope of practice, and introducing a chronic disease prevention and long-term care management plan. So I was also pleased to announce this summer our commitment to build a new mental health treatment facility to replace the Waterford Hospital. Healthcare professionals have told me there is enough money in the system. We just need to manage it better. Be outcome focused, be more proactive in our thinking. It was with that focus we announced our in-home healthy living assessment for seniors 70 years and above. This will help seniors stay healthier and allow them to live in their own homes and in their own communities. For example, if we prevent just 160 of the 1,200 falls seniors have each year, this program pays for itself. It's innovative at addressing one of the biggest challenges, biggest issues, with a solution that brings economic benefits. While there are challenges in healthcare due to a changing demographic and diverse geography, there are savings to be made with better management of healthcare. We need to stop the waste in government, get our finances under control, find solutions to the issues, and also bring economic benefits, and provide the strong leadership and better fiscal management that our province needs now more than ever.
Thank you very much, sir. And Premier Davis, you wrap it up.
Thank you, Patty. This is indeed an interesting question, and one that spawns quite often the most discussion and criticism between parties, and questions that give rise in the House Assembly. And they charge that we're spending too much. They do that from time to time. They do it on a regular basis when the House of Assembly, but at the same time, they come to the House of Assembly and they ask for more. In the first few weeks of the spring sitting, there was hundreds of millions of dollars in new asks from the Liberal Party in particular, but from the opposition parties. They complain and talked about employees in public service, and they've talked about we have too many, and they've talked about we have too few. They've claimed they're going to change all this. But before we get down to this, let's just unpack all this just for a second, because part of the challenge is really presented in your question. Now, I recognize that the current rate of expenditure is not sustainable. That's a fact. It's simply not sustainable. But just consider where we were a decade ago, and we were behind the rest of the country. We've talked about this earlier, in infrastructure and services and social programs and salaries. And there's a huge demand by people in the province that wanted improvements in all of those areas. And we owed it to the people of the province to address those pressing issues in infrastructure and social programs and services. And let me give you just one example of an initiative that we took on and we continue to work towards achieving better outcomes today, and that's in dialysis. And I know a little bit about dialysis. I spent a fair bit of time in previous years. My dad was a dialysis patient. I fully understand the stress that's put on families and on patients when it comes to dialysis. But people had essentially one place to go for dialysis, had to come to St. John's, and that's no longer the case, because in more communities than ever before, people can stay close to home to obtain those dialysis services. A full 37% of all government expenditures are health expenditures, a full 37%. And it goes up and down from year to year. It's been up as high as 39, close on 40%. And a further 21% is in education. So to lower expenditures on the short term, there are only so many ways to do it. And one of the highest expenditures in healthcare are salaries. So my question would be to the opposition parties, if we're going to reduce expenditures, if their plan is to reduce expenditures on healthcare, how are you going to start? What clinics, what rural town clinics, small town clinics will you close? Who are you going to make work longer hours and harder? We know that healthcare workers work too long hours now and are under tremendous pressure. How many teachers are too many? Or how many teachers are not enough? And how many schools and classrooms and labs do we need? How many hospital beds? How many LPNs and doctors are too many or not enough? And we have more nurses and doctors today than we've ever had in our history. And we do have to get a handle on our spending, especially in areas like health. And the best way to do that, Mr. McCurdy's talked about earlier, is to look at what's the root cause of our costs for healthcare. And we do have an aging population. We have the fastest aging population in the country today, and we will have the fastest, or the oldest population in the country in a few short years. So can our province improve on rankings, on national measures relating to personal health? And I've said many times, I know we can, I believe we can. We've got some of the best professionals in the country working right here in our healthcare system. And we can aspire and work towards becoming the healthiest people in the country, both in terms of personal health and also mental health. And we know that over time, a healthier population will reduce healthcare costs. Now, many governments will govern in 4-year blocks. Where do I need to get my 4-year block to get to the next election? This will be a long-term initiative. This will be a long-term initiative over many, many years, and the benefits will continue to grow as times go on. But we have to focus on the health of our people. There's no two ways about it, and we haven't done a very good job of that, Patty. In my vision, we could consider health and wellness in the planning and delivery of all government programs and activities. We need to be healthier and eat healthier and feed and care for our children healthier. We need to put the proper conditions in place, such as tax credits for wellness. Why can't we encourage families to have their children engaged in healthy activity? We need to be affordable and more accessible healthy foods, better diagnostics, and primary services for all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And to chart the process forward and get this underway, last year I convened the first ever Premier Summit on Healthcare. Hundreds of frontline professionals and stakeholders from all over the province came together. And as a result of what we learned, we are developing plans that will enable us to provide enhanced services and facilities while at the same time mitigating the growth of costs throughout the system, because that's what we have to do. So we brought the people in the room who in many cases were the frontline people, and we asked them, how are we going to do this? What is it we need to focus on? And we learned a lot. And that's what I believe in, that consultation with frontline people, consultation with stakeholders, we get best results, we get the best information, and that's what we did at the first Premier's Healthcare Summit.
Thank you very much. Okay. Nobody wanted to go down that road. I'm happy to kick it off. Private public partnerships. Why? Premier Davis, why not, gentlemen? Premier?
Absolutely. We face one of the critical challenges that we face in healthcare today, and we've all heard it, is you know about the cases of a person who's sick enough they go to an emergency room, they're seen by a doctor, and the doctor determines, yes, you're sick and you have to stay at the hospital. But you're going to lie on a stretcher in an emergency room maybe for the next few hours or maybe the next few days. And we have to understand, what is the root problem of that? Why is that happening? And it happens throughout our province. We have a large percentage of acute care hospital beds that are occupied by alternative level of care patients, long-term care patients, patients who are waiting for a bed outside of the hospital, patients that are not well enough to go home but don't need to be in an acute care bed. And we needed to deal with that, and it happens across the province. How many times do you hear of a person who goes to a hospital because they have a surgery scheduled or they have a procedure scheduled where they need to have an overnight stay in the hospital, and last minute it's canceled because they don't have a bed? And that's where we looked at long-term care and how do we fix long-term care. Now, Mr. Ball has talked about major investments in infrastructure. He talked about a new Waterford Hospital. And we know that in order to reduce the demands on emergency rooms, on surgeries and diagnostics and so on, that we need to free up those beds. And long-term care beds, quickly addressing the need for long-term care, is a good way to do that. We all know what our finances are like as a province. And we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars today to invest in infrastructure. We do. We invest largely in infrastructure in many ways, We had to find ways, and how do we find ways, and what options are available to us to deal with this issue that we have? And one of the ways is to follow a model that's followed by every province in Canada. Every other province in Canada. Liberal governments, NDP governments follow this plan in other parts of Canada where they do a partnership with private business. Now, private business in healthcare is not something that's new. Pharmacists are private business. Family doctors are quite often private business operators. They operate their own clinic, a service paid for by the government for the people of the province. Personal care homes are private business. And we know all those services are different from long-term care, but they are services provided to the people. And that's where we've gone. And these long-term contracts have worked well in other provinces. There are places where they've stumbled and they've had challenges. There's no two ways about that. And we've looked at those, and we're partnering with Partnership BC, a British Columbia Crown agency owned by the government who develops and operates such projects as the long-term care project that we're doing.
Anybody? I can jump in. But
Oh, I'm ready to go. First of all, I'm pleased to address this actually. So when you look at healthcare and the healthcare budget, there's about four significant silos. One being hospitals, drugs, physicians, and other institutions. And when you compare us to the Canadian average right now, for hospitals and institutions, this is where we are above the Canadian average. And that is largely because we have a large number of people that are medically discharged and looking for placements into either long-term care or for community services. 40% of our long-term care challenges can be addressed by putting in place the appropriate community services. That is one of the reasons why we've already talked about the healthy assessments for seniors, which would be free for people that are 70 years old. So having those community services in place, which would mean home support workers and so on, and that would address about 40% of our problem. Then we had the 60% of our problem, which requires infrastructure. Now, the Deputy Premier and current Minister, I guess, responsible for this, and the Premier himself, has said that they are confident that they have evidence to support that this can be done cheaper by privatization. But yet, they've completely left that hidden. They will not support that documentation. We've asked for it. Lots of people in this province have asked for it. I don't believe it exists based on the research that I've seen across the country. That is the reason why that we said that long-term care services in our province would not be privatized under a Liberal government. We've made that quite clear. When you look at the construction of the building itself, in this particular case, we put out two options. We talked to this about the Waterford Hospital as an example. We know we have tight budget constraints right now, and we are challenged. So what we need to do is how do you address this long-term care situation so it is not impacting acute care services? So what you do is you go out, what we consider to be a performance-based option. We bring back that option. We look at the traditional option that's also available to us. We do the value for money analysis. That is then shared with the people of the province, and then whatever is best for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians is the route that a new Liberal government would take.
I guess there's a couple of things, but first of all, to the people who are in acute care beds because they haven't got a place to go. I think that problem goes right back to the proper home care. One thing that has to be borne in mind in addressing home care is to look at the current workforce in that sector. And what you've got, I'm told, is people who are primarily in the last few years of their working careers. We're not attracting young people. So unless we immediately have a strategy to get at that, it's only a matter of time before the caregivers are going to be care needers, and we're not going to be able to rely on, we'll have to put more people into institutions because we don't have the caregivers. That is something, and that has to be dealt with in terms of professional standards, training, and a rate of pay that's competitive with what people get working in institutions and looking after patients. So that's first step. Secondly, we need long-term care facilities in the future for those people who can no longer, when they get to the point when they can no longer be cared for in their own home. Where I take issue with is this issue of privatizing that or having these P3 arrangements, whether it's in the either in the operation of the facilities or, for that matter, in the construction. The agency, the entity able to get the best interest rates by far to finance healthcare or any other capital expenditures is government, just by their sheer size and purchasing power. They can get the best interest rate. That alone is an almost impossible advantage for anyone else to overcome in the private sector. Plus, government's in there for the purpose of delivering a service. I don't see how, I mean, if you enter into the kind of thing that both Mr. Ball and Mr. Davis appear to promote, of saying, well, we'll have the actual construction cost borne by someone in the private sector, somehow because we can't afford to take on the hundreds of millions of dollars in capital costs. Well, sure, to do that, the people who are building it don't do it out of the goodness of their heart. You have to enter into a 25 or 30 or 40-year contract to make payments every single month throughout that 25 or 30 or 40 years, and that is, so it's only a matter of trying to somehow hide the debt on the balance sheet, but ultimately it has to show up somewhere because that's a contractual commitment that you'll have to honor. So it costs more. Partnership BC, some of these people who bring forward these things they talk about a discount rate, and somehow they attach a dollar figure to transferring the risk from government to the private sector, and the Auditor General in BC has in fact taken issue with how Partnership BC does that and believes that they have overstated the benefits of P3 arrangements, and that those P3s have ended up in fact costing the taxpayer more. And then there's the question of, as well, of quality of service, and I believe in a public service for both health care and long-term care.
Go with the previous P3 and then yours, Mr. Ball.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Yes, because I know the Liberals who initially were completely opposed to any type of public-private partnership, and several of them have stated that, and now they seem to be moving towards it with the Waterford Hospital. And we're looking at there are different models of public-private partnerships. And what we're doing here is not what most people see as a full P3 setup. A full P3, quite often, and Mr. McCurdy alluded to it, is where private sector would build a facility, but the government operates and runs the facility. And there are differences in that project, and there is different implications to those types of projects versus the one that we're following with long-term care. And that's the one that the Waterford Hospital, they're talking about doing at the Waterford Hospital. And they're doing that because of the very fact that we have this financial challenge that we have in our province today. But building a full-blown P3, as the Liberals are planning to do,
No, we're not.
some of your Liberals are talking about doing.
Well, I'm
And
speaking tonight.
the actual cost of that is significant. So to build a new hospital is probably going to be in a range of about $500 million.
325 according to your numbers.
Well, it's going to cost you more than that.
So you're not,
you more than that.
So not only are you hiding the
about
evidence,
$500
not only
million.
are you hiding the evidence
We've
around
got-
P3s, now you're hiding the evidence around the cost of the new Waterford Hospital.
Finished? Yeah.
I want that answer.
I got stopped when I tried to talk with
Well,
you
I
there.
mean-
But anyway, look, the Waterford Hospital is going to cost about $500 million. The HST to the province is valued at close to $200 million. So if you look over a 5-year period, which is about the time that it's going to take to build a Waterford Hospital, that's $1.5 billion additional expenses for 2 promises that the Liberals have made. 2 promises, $1.5 billion, and you can cut it any way you want. That's about what the numbers amount to. I would like nothing more not to do HST. I would like nothing more than to build a brand new Waterford Hospital. We need to focus on programs and services, and we got to improve programs and services for people who need them most. And that's where my focus is right now, why we can't afford to build a new Waterford Hospital. We can't afford to build a new penitentiary today, and we can't afford to build a new courthouse today. All of those things cost hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. My focus is on programs and services to people. That's what people want. They want when they pick up the phone and call somebody, they want a response for that. They want the help when they need it most, and that's where we need to focus.
Sir.
Yeah, it was interesting earlier, and I will answer the question that came from someone up above there, when the Premier talked about that the money to build Muskrat was actually coming from our oil resources. Well, I'd like to remind the people, or the Premier at least there, that the money that we're currently using to build Muskrat is actually borrowed money. That's being borrowed this year. But I'd like to talk about a little bit about the performance-based infrastructure that we just mentioned. If we delay doing major infrastructure projects like the Waterford Hospital, there's economic costs to the province of about $749 million a year. These are the numbers that we've been given by the sources that are out there. So if you delay replacing a hospital that was built in the mid-1800s, just think about what I just said. Mid-1800s, that's the institution that we're looking at replacing. So right now, I think it's responsible to look at all options that are available to us, then make the decision, share that information with the people of the province, share the information with the people that are impacted by that, unlike what this Premier is doing with the long-term care privatization project that he's doing right now. Steve Kent has put out there, he says that there's evidence to support that this would be a cheaper, that there is savings for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And he's never once, and the Premier has not done this, put that money out there so that people of Newfoundland and Labrador can see what that evidence actually is.
I'm going to tell you, we're going through a process, and we'll have all the information for you, and we'll make that available to you when we get the data all compiled. We've got all our summaries done, and it's hard to give you. You know this, Dwight. It's hard to give information when we're going through a bid process, and people haven't entered their bids yet and haven't made their submissions. So once they've made their bids and they make their submission, we have the information, and we'll make the decision on the best way forward.
So
and if it's the best way forward, we'll do that. And if it's not the best way forward, we'll look at alternatives.
Are you going to deny that the Deputy Premier said that there was cost savings with a privatization of long-term care? Because he said that. And matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you would deny it, because only a few weeks ago when he said that you were going to do a cabinet review of the bonuses at Nalcor, he said that in the morning and withdrew that and was claimed to be misspoken that same afternoon. So I'd like for clarification on that.
I'd like to know where we're getting our numbers of 365, 500 million. I think a question as a voter. And when it comes to Muskrat, we're borrowing the money, but with all due respect to elected members, current and future, government's not repaying that. I'm repaying that with my hydro bill. So that's my problem. What about Muskrat, sir? I'm not supposed to do this, but who said Muskrat? What about it? And that's our burden that you and I are going to have to suffer, sir. So the $2 billion plus that they had, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, we're paying that back ourselves. Well, they borrowed the money on our behalf. We get to repay it on their behalf. That's right. That's actually how that works. Closing statements is what we're going to make our way to now. And feel free to address what I said if you see fit inside your 5 minutes. Premier Davis, go ahead. Sir, would you like to reply to that? Because you're the man at the helm of the government who borrowed that money on my behalf.
Just briefly. We came in with the crumbling and falling infrastructure in our province. We had major issues to fix, and electricity requirements, electricity grid in our province, the supply of electricity in our province was one of those. We reviewed all of the options that were available to us, and the clear best choice was Muskrat Falls. It's a huge project, there's no doubt about it. There's big cost involved with it, there's no two ways about that. There's no doubting that. But it's either that or the lights go out. We had to fix the problem, and that's the steps we're taking. It's a hard one. It's a hard one to fix, but we had to fix the problem of electricity supply for Newfoundland and Labrador. That's the hard
30 seconds
truth.
apiece. We're going closing
The problem
statements. 30 seconds each.
The problem is, Mr. Davis, you spent the money twice. If you look at the if you look at the current this year's budget, you'll see that there's there's I believe a $760 million allocation to Nalcor, of which something like $570 million is cash into Muskrat Falls, and there's also, according to your minister, $625 million in accrued tax reductions. We couldn't afford both. You spent that money both, and when you look at an overall deficit of $1.1 billion in current account, and you got 760 gone to Nalcor, 570 of it to Muskrat Falls, plus 630, it's not hard to figure out where the deficit came from.
Another 30 seconds for you, Mr. Ball, before closing statements,
Yeah,
please.
thank you. This project was sanctioned at $6.2 billion. It's currently at $7.65. Costs the interest during construction will add another $1.3 billion onto that. So it's already at $9 billion. It's time right now to put some people in position there that can get this project back on track, because right now, God knows where this is going to go in the future. And we all know who's paying for this. It's the ratepayers of Newfoundland and Labrador. If we are paying debt servicing, well, that's less health care, that's less education, that's less roads, that's less infrastructure in our province. That's the issue that I have with the current concept.
Trying to get the budget back on track, Dwight. The budget today is 7.6. The project is the least cost option that remains to be.
No, that's not true. At $60 a barrel, at $60,
Well,
at
It's what I'm going to do, because I think we can actually have this debate tomorrow morning on Open Lawn. I'm happy to entertain. Let's move on to the closing statements and through the random draw. Liberal leader Dwight Ball, you're up first, sir.
Thank you, Paddy. Newfoundland and Labrador is at a critical juncture. At no other time has it been more important to get our economy and our province back on track. The economy is complex. It's not an issue that we can look at in isolation, but rather something that is impacted by many different factors. And why tonight's discussion is so important, because it is not an easy issue. That doesn't mean that we cannot do better. I've never backed away from anything because it wasn't easy. We need to recognize that things like population, education, training, inadequate business supports, red tape, and roadblocks, relying on one industry but forgetting about others, and the host of other challenges are all part of that equation. This will require big picture thinking, long-term planning, and strong fiscal management if we want to get things moving in a right direction. Because amongst all the uncertainty out there, one thing is for certain. We just can't keep doing the same things and expect different outcomes. As Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, you've told me that you want better management, that you want stronger leadership and solutions that you can be part of. You've told me that you want a government that really listens, shares information, and engages with you. You've told me you want a government that you can trust. These are things that we can do differently, that we can do better. And while I've heard other parties talk about cuts and job losses, I'll tell you one thing. That is not my idea of doing things differently or doing things better. The Liberal Party has laid out more policy than any other party. And tonight we have announced 2 more policy commitments that we will now help support the growing economy, but also the hardworking people who are the driving force behind it. A new Liberal government will promote career-focused curriculum in high schools, including entrepreneurship and co-op education. And we will increase the funding available as part of the Early Learning and Childcare Supplement in order to recruit and retain early childhood educators in communities throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. Some of our other recent commitments include the replacement of the Waterford Hospital, the Office of a Seniors Advocate, in-home healthy living assessments for seniors, reversing the HST increase, an independent appointments commission to finally take the politics out of appointments, a commitment to use the revenue from the sale of surplus power from Muskrat Falls to offset electricity rates in this province, as well as many other policies. And in the coming weeks, we look forward to releasing our full policy platform. The people of this province will see why the Liberal plan is the best plan that will bring this province past the challenges of today and onward to a future that is better for everyone. As leader of the Liberal Party, I'm proud to be part of an incredible team of strong candidates that we have attracted, a very diverse group of people who have the experience that we need to take on the economic issues and opportunities that's before us, a team that's unmatched by any other party. We have 38 candidates already in place who are just as committed as I am to the people of this province, because together we can diversify the economy and build a better Newfoundland and Labrador. Our Liberal team will apply evidence-based decision-making to everything that we do. We'll identify targets so that we are outcome-focused and accountable to the people of this province. We'll be more innovative in our thinking so that we can address the biggest issues with solutions that also bring economic benefits. And we'll stop the waste in government and redirect those waste savings to areas where it's needed the most. We'll do all those things with the support of people as a new Liberal government. So in closing, I want to thank CARE and Memorial University for the opportunity to come together for this discussion on the economy this evening. It's a very important discussion because in 47 days, the people of the province will have their opportunity and their choice. That choice will impact the direction of this province, charting the course of long-term economic well-being. And what I presented here tonight will help inform that very important decision. And with the support of the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, our Liberal plan, and with our residents, realize a stronger, more diverse economy, a growing population, and good, well-paying jobs. I have great pride in our province, great pride in our people. They have so much to offer, in my estimation, more than most. We have a rich and a wonderful culture, and the best people. Now is the time for Newfoundland and Labrador that is self-sufficient, sustaining, and strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ball. Next up is PC Leader Premier Paul Davis.
Thank you, Patty. I first want to thank CARE for organizing tonight's debate, and I think the discussion is an important one. And I thank you, Patty, as well, for the excellent job you've done in keeping us on topic, or maybe not so much sometimes. But you did your always good self. And to Mr. Ball and Mr. McCurdy, thank you. Congratulations to both of you as well. And thank you to all of you here tonight, for all of you who have taken the time to attend, to come out to listen to three politicians talk about their viewpoints. And also I want to take a moment just to thank you for no one sang out the scores at a ball game, so thanks for doing that. Tonight, I didn't hear it, I don't want to hear it. Tonight, these two gentlemen here have tried to convince you that the short-term dip in our province's revenues due to the worldwide downturn in commodity prices, that somehow erases the incredible progress that we've made as a province, that we've achieved as a people and as a government during the last 12 years. And they've attempted to convince you that our party, the PC party, have worked on your behalf to rescue Newfoundland and Labrador, from a collapse that the Liberals left behind. Is somewhat now, we're no longer right now are not capable of navigating our way through this difficult time, this slowdown, with the same vigor and drive and determination and conviction that we pulled us through to challenges in the past from 2003 and 2009 and onward. But if you were to think that was the true picture, that we're no longer capable, I can tell you I'll be the first one and along the loudest and longest to say, yes, it is time for change, but it's not the way that things are. It's not an accurate picture of the progress that we've made as a province. And just a year ago, we led the entire country in economic growth, posting GDP figures that surpassed those of some of the world's strongest economies. Those gains at the macro level have had real, measurable impact on families and on people. Employment has risen and earnings have risen. Disposable income has risen. At the same time, poverty has fallen to the lowest in Canada. That's the fact. Our poverty is the lowest in Canada. Student debt has fallen. Barriers for accessibility to education and healthcare and other essential services have fallen. Families in the province are better off today than when the party I now lead took office 12 years ago. And even Mr. Ball couldn't agree to that, and he couldn't deny it either. But it's not politically expedient. It is not politically expedient for other party leaders to acknowledge it, and I understand why he wouldn't do that. The gains are real, progress is real, and I'm proud of how far our province has come and how far we've come as a people. And it's a series of deliberate choices that have brought us here. The choice to invest in crumbling infrastructure, the choice to diversify by investing in aquaculture and agriculture and tourism and arts and research and development, the choice to invest in unprecedented poverty reduction strategy. And those choices are the reasons that our economy is thriving. And even as commodities like oil and iron ore minerals are scraping to the bottom, right down to the bottom of their cycles, we are continuing to make progress. And those prices will cycle upwards again. They will. And we'll be ready to reap the gains and the benefits that come to Newfoundland and Labrador. We are going to get through the fiscal challenges that low oil and iron ore prices have created, and we're going to do it by walking a path that many do not associate with traditional conservative Republican right-wing parties. But that's because the far right is not where we lie on the political spectrum. We are progressive, yes we are, but we wear our social conscience on our sleeves. We refuse to make precipitous cuts to public service. I've refused to do that. We've refused to slash thousands of jobs and drive our economy into the tailspin. That approach was already tried in the early 90s by a party whose spokesperson seems to be calling for some of those failed approaches. If you listen carefully, you'll hear it. And some of their members have said it, and they're on record as saying, we don't know what part of government we're going to eliminate until we get into government. They dress it up as being fiscally responsible, but in fact it's socially regressive and fiscally naive and economically disastrous for us as a province. And instead we've taken a measured and balanced approach by looking at the fiscal picture with a wider lens, not focusing just on 2015, but charting our course with a clear vision for 2020 and for the decades beyond that. We'll do nothing rash this year that will jeopardize our long-term goals and spiral us back into the hole that we spent a decade trying to dig out of. Now, my approach as Premier is different. It's about people. It's about sustainable future. It's about a social conscience, and it's about following a clear path. It's about doing more than just talking about diversification and new technology. It's about following through with tangible investments in research and development, in fish farming, and food security, in tourism and infrastructure, and venture capital, and the best student aid program, and tuition fees anywhere in the country. And when others criticize us for the choices we make, keep in mind the choices that we are making. And I ask us, which of those choices would you probably want to live without if you had a change in government? And it's because of our choices that our future prospects are not dismal, but they are really very, very bright. So we are a national leader, and don't be hoodwinked into jeopardizing that. Make your choices wisely. Listen very carefully to what the alternatives present. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Premier Davis. Our final statement this evening is Leader of the NDP, Earle McCurdy. Sir.
Well, thanks very much, Paddy. Thanks for moderating this. Thanks to my two counterparts for participating in the debate, and of course to CARE for organizing it. It's a challenge to do justice to all the issues, even with the very generous amount of time that was allocated. Just want to reiterate key areas of focus: opportunities for youth, care for seniors, increased focus on public health and community-based health clinics, developing our economy in a sustainable way that enhances our natural environment. The NDP approach is to regard no one in society as dispensable. We would, if successful, on November 30th, we would tackle the considerable challenges arrayed before us with humility, but also with determination and a sense of values. Values that Tommy Douglas epitomized to the point of being chosen by the public as the greatest Canadian. Values that Jack Layton captured so well before his untimely death. Values that Tom Mulcair will take to the ballot box on Monday. Mr. Ball talked about other parties talking about cuts and job losses, and other parties in the plural. I only see two others besides his, then that can only mean he's implying that ours did. And for the record, we do not talk about or promote job cuts or losses. With respect to the Liberals, I would say check the track record, not only in this jurisdiction but in others. Nova Scotia is going through chaos up there at the moment with a Liberal government. There's a lot more we could have said, if time permitted, about the need to give a fair shake to the people of Labrador, who have often borne the environmental brunt of resource extraction without sharing to the extent they should in the benefits flowing from those resources. About the need to have greater transparency about the costs and benefits associated with the Muskrat Falls project, including an independent assessment of costs, sustainability, and options to lessen the impact on electricity rates. About the value of our public sector, which acted during the worldwide recession as an important stabilizer. About the need for a comprehensive approach to gender equity, absolutely needed in a province where women earn on average 73% as much as men, where they take primary responsibility for child and elder care, and where so many live out their retirement years in poverty, often alone. You know, it doesn't have to be that way. I could talk about a new deal for municipalities, including a review of our over-reliance on property taxes and the arbitrary property assessment system that causes so much inequity. These are all challenges, but they're also opportunities. Our fiscal situation is far from ideal, but nowhere near as bad as it was in the wake of the fisheries collapse in the 1990s, a terribly demoralizing period for our province. We have the fiscal room to navigate our way through these difficulties. We won't do it by obsessing about our debt. The NDP has a very strong history of prudent fiscal management in this country. The Parliamentary Budget Office has reviewed the record of the three main political parties in the last 35 years, in the jurisdictions in which they've held power, and found that the party that most frequently balanced the budget was the NDP, and in cases where they didn't, had the lowest amount of deficit relative to the size of the economy in the particular province. The ambitious suite of ideas and policies I've attempted to outline here this evening won't happen overnight. It'll take time, and it'll have to be balanced with our financial circumstances. But it's important to build policy on a solid foundation of values and principles. What we need is a fresh approach to governing, a more inclusive, more hopeful, more forward-looking way of conducting our affairs, one that believes all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have a right to a decent chance to achieve their dreams and aspirations. I believe we have the team that can accomplish that, and it's great to see so many of our candidates here tonight. As a people, We survived Beaumont Hamel, we survived the Newfoundland sealing disaster, we survived the loss of the Ocean Ranger and the collapse of the fishery. We can surely overcome the financial and demographic challenges in which we find ourselves. This is no time to lose our nerve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Earle. That concludes the format for this evening. I think it's important that we certainly thank all of you for coming tonight. It was it was a busy time, and there was stick and ball on the go, and you made your way out to hear the leaders speak to the economic issues of the province. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you to everyone at home who watched on mun.ca/care on the webcast, and thank you very much to the 3 provincial leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Your leaders, next premier, somewhere there. That concludes it for me. I think we have Professor Lynch. Would you like to wrap it up? Last word of the night goes to one of our hosts, Professor Lynch, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm not going to keep you long, but there's a few people I'd like to thank. We'd like to thank the leaders and Patty. It was an interesting night. This function would not have happened if it wasn't for the administrative staff of the Department of Economics, Susan and Barbara. And I'd like to thank, big hand for them. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Doug and Wade. And finally, Doug has agreed to mark your notes if you want to give them to him. Good night, everybody. Thanks.